Buenas noches, buenas and half a day. Welcome to the 38th Guam Legislature, your Guam Legislature, the People's House. The Committee on Finance and Government Operations is hereby called to order. Today is Easter Monday, March 30th, 2026, and the time is 08:36. Notice of this hearing was first provided on March 23rd, 2026, and a second notice was issued March 26, 2026 in compliance with the Open Government Law. This hearing is being held in the public hearing room in the Guam Congress Building and is being broadcast on DTA Channel 12, Docomo Channel 117, and streamed online via the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues today present who have joined us. Vice Speaker and Vice Chair of this committee, Senator Tony Ada, Vice Speaker Ada, Speaker Frank Blas Jr., Senator Tello Tadigui, and Senator Therese Chalahi. Thank you, colleagues, for joining me today. We also have representatives of the Department of Revenue and Taxation, stakeholders, and members of the public if they wish to join as well. The committee has also requested the presence of Mr. Edward Byrne of the Department of Administration, given the procurement, contract management, and systems oversight issues that intersect with today's agenda. For those wishing to testify, written testimony may be submitted to the office of Senator Christopher M. Duenas. We ask that all individuals providing oral testimony keep their remarks concise and respectful. The rules of decorum will be enforced. Please silence all electronic devices. This oversight hearing is about to begin. We will now recognize also the presence of Senator Sean Gumatauto. Ladies and gentlemen, and those, of course, listening and watching this hearing, and those present, this oversight hearing is not just routine. It is necessary. Over the past 18 months, the Department of Revenue and Taxation has experienced a clear and troubling pattern of system failures, service disruptions, and administrative breakdowns. From the driver's license system crash in early 2025 to inaccurate tax balances displayed to the public, expired vendor contracts in September 2025 to delayed property tax billing earlier this year. And now in March 2026, we are facing a near total disruption of DRT's digital infrastructure during peak tax season. Online portals are down. Core services are limited. Refund processing is delayed. This is not a one-time issue. It reflects systemic challenges in planning, procurement, oversight, and execution. The purpose of today's hearing is straightforward: to understand what went wrong, to determine what needs to be fixed, and to ensure that this does not happen again. The people of Guam deserve a Department of Revenue and Taxation that works consistently, reliably, and transparently. At this time, and they have come forward already, I'd like to invite the Director of Department of Revenue and Taxation, Ms. Marie Lezama, to come forward. And Director Lezama, you have brought members of your team, so before you make your presentation, I'll allow you to introduce the members of your team, and then the Sergeant-at-Arms will swear you in, as this is going to be discussing not only tax issues, but finance issues within the government of Guam.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Speaker Blas, Vice Speaker Ada, Senator Gumatauto, Senator Chalahi, Senator Tadigui. My name is Marie Lezama, and I am the Director of the Department of Revenue and Taxation. And along with me this morning, I do have the Tax Enforcement Administrator, Carolyn Rivera. I have the Acting Motor Vehicle Division Administrator, Zita Pangilinan. I have our Deputy Director, Denise Mendiola. I have the Banking and Insurance Commissioner, Michelle Santos. I have our Management Analyst, Mikhail Spiritu, and I have the Taxpayer Services Administrator, Jerome Muggan.
Thank you. Just for the record, did you have a chance to discuss, and not that it's your responsibility, but I don't see Ed Byrne here. Did you have any discussions with Director Byrne whether or not he would be accepting our invitation?
As of Friday, he did mention that he would be present. I think he did mention, though, that he would not be able to sit through the entire hearing because of, medical issues.
Okay, so we hope for his arrival, but nonetheless, we'll continue. And now you'll be sworn in by the Sergeant at Arms.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Okay. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed.
Thank you, Director and Reverend Tax team. I understand, Director Lezama, that you have a presentation. For the listening public, this presentation was issued to senators. I don't believe we had enough notice to be able to put it up on the for display, but we will accept your testimony as presentation before we go into the questions from the panel. Director Lezama, you may proceed.
That is correct, sir. And we can also forward an electronic copy, to the body. Okay. So, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. At the outset, I want to be clear about where the department stands. DRT is operational. Core services are being delivered to the public every day. However, we are operating under significant constraints driven by system reliability issues, staffing capacity limitations, and legacy infrastructure. Our focus is straightforward. We need to stabilize operations, standardize processes, and move deliberately toward modernization. Before addressing challenges and covering the items on the agenda, it is important to ground this discussion in actual performance data. Based on recent customer feedback, 91% of customers rated services as good to excellent, and the majority of transactions are completed within 60 minutes. Internally, we see strong mission alignment and committed staff across the department. This tells us that the foundation is not broken, but it also tells us something equally important. Performance is not consistently experienced across all interactions. This is not a failure of our workforce. What we are seeing is a consistency gap. That gap is driven by three primary factors: system reliability, staffing capacity, and process standardization. First, system reliability. We are operating on legacy platforms with known instability, including vendor-related issues that directly impact service delivery. Second, staffing capacity. Several critical areas, particularly within motor vehicle operations, are operating below optimal staffing levels, which limits output and increases strain on employees. Third, process standardization. There is an inconsistent application of procedures, often due to system interruptions or varying supervisory practices, which leads to variability in the customer service experience. And if I may, let's just go ahead. There's a handout with regard to the agenda items that was given to me ahead of the meeting. And before we actually go into the first subject, again, our workforce is committed and aligned with the mission. However, capacity constraints and emerging burnout signals require attention, particularly in high-demand service areas. We are actively addressing this through training, communication improvements, and workforce planning. Let's see here. Okay, so now to the agenda that you see in front of you. With regard to staffing, the agency continues to experience recruitment and retention challenges, and we are currently at 63% of the authorized level. Some of these things are because of uncompetitive salary levels. We've also had losses due to poaching by other GovGuam agencies or the private sector. And the other issue is the requirement of technical expertise. Historically, there's been a huge gap, or there's been a growing huge gap between senior and entry-level employees. Recent certification packets for positions highlighted by published by the Department of Administration include Administrative Aide, Revenue Officer 1, Data Control Clerk 2, and Revenue Agent 1. Out of those positions, it should be noted that 10 declined to interview, 3 no-showed, and 1 declined the job offer. So what did we do, or what are we trying, what do we plan ahead? We need to continue to work with the Department of Administration on certification packets and position description questionnaires. We have already tapped on DRT retirees, and we continue to want to do that because they have no training, that they need not be trained, and they already possess the technical skills and expertise needed for the job. However, we also would like to see if we can entice more of them to return through the restoration of limited personal leave. We know that they already are able to acquire sick leave, but perhaps consideration of limited personal leave, such as I believe there's a bill out there for the rehiring of teachers, and perhaps maybe another look at the current maximum step we are able to hire them at. We have participated, and we will continue to participate in the University of Guam and Guam Community College internship programs. And we've strengthened our workforce with the conversion of limited term employees or appointments through their qualifying, rating, and going through the competitive process. As far as the budget is concerned, our budget is not a fixed budget. Our budget is able to allow for budget modifications. However, we are aware that that creates challenges if the need is immediate. It also causes confusion. Confusion in that as the body looks at the budget, they will think that we have not effectively spent what was allocated for that particular line item. It also does not take into account unexpected year-over-year increases, such as the cost of doing business or external factors that drive up costs. Additionally, there are internal factors. We have federal and local mandates, many of which are unfunded. As you are aware, Guam mirrors the Internal Revenue Code, and sometimes that requires the implementation of applicable U.S. federal tax changes immediately. These oftentimes require software updates and staff training with $0 in local appropriation for implementation. There are other mandates and other items or subjects that have come across that has affected us. There's the One Big Beautiful Bill. There's the BPT rollback. Additionally, statute requires that there be a revaluation of all Guam property every 3 years. However, the last revaluation started in 2014 and completed in 2015. So we took it upon ourselves to ensure that we get that project started. That cost nearly $4 million. While we did get approval from BBMR to use the ARP funds, the problem was there was additional cost to that we had to cover. We also had to stand up the tobacco stamps program. Again, that was delayed for years. We also have to continue with the cannabis industry. And this is not an all-inclusive list. I do have others, but those are the main ones that we've come across. So what are we going to do, or what have we done? We believe we can improve the tracking of data with DOA's recent cumulative summary of budget versus actual expenditures and monthly expenditures report and year-to-date expenditures report. With regard to, we've streamlined the process with Customs and Quarantine Agency, and we need to further streamline that to reconcile use tax data. We know that we are one of the pilot agencies for performance based budget. 3 pilot areas where drivers are identified are driver's license, general licensing, and the use tax over the business privilege tax branch. We have set key performance indicators, and the plan is to expand it to other branches, although we need to proceed carefully given that the other branches include tax and is kind of complex. Okay. Now our strategic priorities. Of course, we will continue to focus on federal and local mandates. We need to continue with collection and compliance efforts. We need to tighten internal processes. We need to modernize or digitize our data. We need to upgrade our equipment and software. And of course, we need to address any outstanding OPA audit findings and recommendations. With regard to customer service standards, and Ms. Pangilinan will probably be able to explain that further, but we did implement recently a QR code for internal and external customers' feedback. We continue with updates or revisions to include our SOPs, our policies, our forms. We look to standardize our verbiage, our scripts, and the fees. We look for more signage, and of course, staff training. Now, moving on to systems, and I apologize, Mr. Chair, did you want me to just kind of continue and then the questions will come after?
Yes, Director Lezama.
Okay.
We would like you to complete your overall presentation on all of the areas that we asked you to present on. So please proceed.
Sure. Item number 2, systems and digital infrastructure. The Better Public Service Fund was created to help modernize DRT, but laws continually get passed that waive the fees that feed it. Every waiver affects the agency's ability to upgrade its aging equipment and servers. System stability remains one of our most significant operational risks. Interruptions and performance issues directly impact customer wait times, staff productivity, and public perception. We are actively managing short-term stabilization while advancing long-term modernization planning. And so when you go to the handout that actually contains the details, so the platform performance, it is no secret, and you mentioned it in your introduction, that we are currently affected by the temporary suspension of our system and its accesses. The public has been advised of limited services, and some branches remain unaffected, while others are employing manual processes. System stability. We do frequently experience intermittent internet services, and of course, there is the issue of aging equipment. With regard to data integrity, I need to make clear that the data that we have is owned by the government of Guam. There have been rumors circulating that it does not belong to government, but that is untrue. Every employee at the agency, to include our vendors, have taken oaths of disclosure. And so any violations of that result in civil and criminal penalties. I cannot look at anyone's, even as a director, I cannot look at anyone's tax information unless I have a business reason to do so. I can't do that for my extended family members. I can't do that for anyone that I may not necessarily care for. And there is no reason to do that. So I just wanted to make that clear. Now, with regard to what we are going to do or what we have done, As we speak, we are working to secure the maintenance agreement, which is affecting our full access and ability to run some operations. We have reached out to seek grant funding to replace aging equipment, enhance technology, and strengthen cybersecurity. Number 3, critical failures in real property and motor vehicle divisions. These areas represent the most visible challenges to the public. It is important to understand that these are not isolated failures. They are symptoms of broader symptom limitations, staffing shortages, and infrastructure constraints. Our approach is to address these root causes rather than treat service level issues. So I will again ask that you refer back to the handout that has details. With regard to real property, the delay of real property tax statements for 2025 was caused by an interface issue between the transaction processing system and DRT's Amentum program. What did it mean? It meant that payments were coming in, but the data was not interfacing to our system. Payments, and Director Byrne can certainly confirm that when he arrives, payments remain in a suspense account. And there are actions to ensure that that is interfaced and is reconciled. What do we do, or what have we done? We ended up being able to issue the 2025 property tax roll, and it was certified by the Board of Equalization. Once certified, the property tax statements were printed and mailed. Penalties and interest were waived by Governor Leon Guerrero, provided taxes were paid no later than December 31, 2026. Our staff is actively working with mortgage lenders and companies which manage workflows for real estate, insurance, and banking. And we are working on a request for a proposal to be issued for the 2026 property tax roll and for a new appraisal and assessment system. It should be noted that we need to ensure that Public Law 37117 will be incorporated into those statements. This law defers any increase in property values associated with the revaluation, provided certain criteria are met. With regard to portal inaccuracies, the driver's license examination branch has been working with its vendor and with the payment vendor to address online transactions that have either not generated or need reconciliation. What we've done and what we continue to do, we are tracking and reporting unresolved service issues with the vendor. With regard to the DMV Operations, the driver's license examination branch continues to experience issues on any occasion. So we have recently been given a TAP grant. What we've done is we've procured new computers, switches, and scanners, and that should alleviate some of the problem. We've connected with other government agencies or entities such as the Division of Homelessness, Assistance, and Poverty Prevention, and the Mayor's Council of Guam to improve processes, and we hope to expand that to include other government agencies or entities. We've resumed discussion of the MAX system. We belong to the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, and in that, as part of that membership, the state of Arizona is one of the jurisdictions in that. They have shared coding of their system with other jurisdictional members and have offered to do the same for Guam. So what does it mean? It means that we get that coding for free. However, we will need to work with the Office of Technology to move forward with trying to implement that system. There is a jurisdiction-to-jurisdiction visit planned with the Office of Technology to determine those actual specifications and additional needs. And that cost is to be fully reimbursed by AMVA. We want to further leverage our membership in AMVA for the motor vehicle division. We want to seek additional grant funding for data modernization. And we still need to address certain implementation of federal changes. We actually will also be continuing DUI hearings as mandated using a grant recently awarded to us. Item number 4, enforcement and compliance and regulatory. Our enforcement capacity is directly tied to staffing levels and system integration. Where systems are not fully aligned or data is fragmented, enforcement efficiency is reduced. Improving integration and staffing will directly strengthen compliance outcomes. And again, back to the handout. With regard to enforcement capacity, the Tax Enforcement Division is composed of collection, examination, and criminal investigation branches. In particular, collection and examination have been significantly affected by the recruitment and retention issue mentioned earlier, and thus are critically understaffed. What are we doing? And I apologize, by the way, because there's one bullet point that needs to go under fraud. So in this particular instance, we have enhanced and we're clarifying the qualifying certificate program processes with the Guam Economic Development Authority and other entities with which we have an agreement. With regard to fraud detection, we are doing a couple of things. The Tax Enforcement Administrator is working with DOA personnel to reconcile accounts. We are also awaiting guidelines of federal funding from the Office of Infrastructure on eligible use for cybersecurity projects. For driver's license, system policies were recently updated in collaboration with the vendor and with OTEC for real ID recertification by the Department of Homeland Security Transportation Security Agency. Regulatory backlogs. Cannabis control meetings had not been conducted earlier, or only recently was pointed out as not having met, since there was no update to be made, and related agenda meeting minutes were not posted on the website. However, after a hearing, we have resumed those meetings and will continue to do so despite no updates having, being made available. The Alcoholic Beverage Control Board meeting minutes also were not updated on the website, but that has also been addressed. We need to continue educational outreach events, even if information is contained on our website, as we have found that there needs to be continued updated information provided to the community. Okay. Number 5, vendor accountability and procurement strategy. We recognize that vendor performance has not consistently met operational needs. Sorry. We are strengthening oversight, clarifying expectations, and advancing a more structured procurement strategy to ensure accountability moving forward. With regard to contract performance on the agenda page, we know that there are service gaps, and we have taken actively to tracking and reporting those. Future procurement, we need to procure the services to ensure that a property tax roll is ready and ready for the Board of Equalization to certify. And we need to procure an appraisal and assessment system. This also includes server upgrades. that are long overdue with regard to being needed. As far as the actions, or what are we going to do? DRT has a FAST team, which is really the finance and administrative team. We've revamped staff responsibilities to ensure dedicated monitoring of deadlines. We have an analyst dedicated to contract monitoring. We seek to consolidate contractual services per vendor. So for example, we have a copier vendor, and we get different invoices because we have different contracts out there executed at different times. But this often causes confusion and leads to our inability to properly plan for that. And finally, we would like to explore interagency integration so that what we have or require and another agency does could basically be completed or achieved within a single agreement. So currently, the department is focused on 5 key actions. We're stabilizing system performance and addressing vendor-related issues. We're standardizing procedures across divisions to ensure consistency. We're strengthening supervision and accountability at all levels. And we're advancing a phased modernization strategy and aligning staffing structures to operational demand. Customer feedback indicates that while overall service is strong, inconsistency in experience is the primary concern. Even isolated negative interactions can significantly impact public trust, especially in a time where news travels virally. Our focus is ensuring that every customer receives the same level of professional, efficient, and respectful service every time. To continue moving forward effectively, the department will require sustained investment in system modernization, stabilization of staffing in critical service areas, procurement flexibility to respond to operational needs, and strengthen vendor accountability mechanisms. In closing, DRT is not standing still. Prior to this recent situation, we had been issuing refunds between 6 to 8 weeks of filing. We've been conducting educational outreach campaigns and employing tools such as infographics to reach a wider range of audiences. And we continue to conduct operations and inspections. We have a clear understanding of the challenges and are trying to address root causes as we actively move toward a more stable, modern, and consistent service environment. We know we play an important role in generating and collecting the majority of Government Guam's general fund. We understand that this body represents public interest and needs to ensure accountability, compliance, and transparency. We need to improve efficiency and prevent mismanagement and fraud. With over 21 branches and ever-changing local and federal mandates, challenges will remain. However, we remain committed to delivering fair, efficient, and respectful service to the people of Guam. As such, we continue to encourage you to visit or reach out to us in your efforts to improve policy and as you draft legislation. Thank you again.
Susmasi, Director Lizama. So just wanted to also make known to the public once again and all of us, this was actually a regularly scheduled to have the oversight as per my committee. Recent events, of course, have taken their course, and that is one of the reasons why some of the issues have been pushed to the forefront. And so we'll go over that line of questioning in a moment. I want to also recognize not just the presence of Senator Taitigui, but she also is it's co-chaired Department of Revenue Taxation with Senator Taitigui being responsible for the regulatory side of the house, and so thank you for being here. And this announcement went out in conjunction with our operations. So I will get started. Director Lezama, when did your department first become aware that critical system licenses and support services were set to expire in September 2025?
We were actually aware of that prior to the end of the fiscal year, the FY25 fiscal year. You're talking about the maintenance contract, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
The contract that's causing all of the current upheaval.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And we had tried our best to, we tried our best to move forward with regard to trying to address that before contract expiration. And of course, one of the key issues was the fact that we did not anticipate, and maybe I don't know if I'm able to talk about this right now, given that we're trying to negotiate an agreement, but we are where we are today. We did find it somewhat difficult to proceed, given the fact that we needed to ensure that Guam law and Guam procurement law were followed.
So I guess it sounds like maybe months before the expiration, you were already aware that this was going to be a problem?
We didn't think it was going to be a problem. We were given the proposal shortly before, if I'm not mistaken, and Mr. Espiritu may be able to speak to that, but we were aware that it was coming up on expiration.
Okay, so I want to go there because my next question is who's actually responsible? And so, of course, I know as being a director before the buck stops with myself, but can we get an update, Mr. Espiritu, on the actual discussions that were ongoing and kind of where the failure happened?
Yes, the maintenance contract was for 5 years from FY21 through FY25, and the total per year was approximately 1.2 million. This was brought up at the end of fiscal year 25, and then we did receive proposals from DMR, but so for the 5 year, it rose from 1.2 million to 1.6 million. For a 3 year contract, it was significantly more, but I don't know that amount, but the 1 year contract amounts to 2.2 million. So we are currently being charged for the 2.2 million without the contract.
But you're no longer receiving services, correct?
Yes.
So, but the engagement was there and the proposal was made. Okay.
Yes.
So I guess that takes me to then, I can't talk to Edward Byrne today. I had a couple questions on that, but maybe I'll just go for the DOA side until he arrives. Did DOA in any way participate in the facilitating of this contract discussion?
No, we hadn't. Well, I take that back. We tried to enter, and by the way, I need to confirm that there were certain issues that were raised as we attempted to move along with contract negotiation. And number one was whether or not we were able to engage in such discussion. And we had received advice that yes, they are your current vendor. There's just absent a maintenance contract. So that was something that we needed to kind of, we needed to kind of put to the side or ensure that it was actually met, because we certainly didn't want to proceed and violate any procurement regulations. So to the extent that DOA, it was really GSA that we had to try to provide clarification on. As we attempted to move through with that, it became clear that there was going to be a funding issue. And again, probably without going into any specific numbers, it was significantly more and certainly not what we had planned for with regard to the budget. So it was a matter of trying to proceed.
Yeah, that's why I think it's critical here to know, because like I said, I mean, I'm just drawing back on my experience. I know that whenever these kind of, obviously the budget's in place and, you know, you've got duties and responsibilities, you're operating within your budget, but also just the communications with DOA, because in the end, that's going to be where the money talk and discussions goes back and forth. And so, you know, as you mentioned earlier in your presentation, I do agree that sometimes internal money movement can be cumbersome, but it's definitely possible. And I understand that budget ceilings and everything else affect that, but those can be overcome.
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, maybe it's just sheer bad luck. I don't know, sir, but it was, we didn't anticipate for the huge increase. We certainly didn't anticipate as we moved along with the revaluation project that there needed to be a workaround. And so there was an increase there that we had not planned for. And so all of that made for, of course, something that we were concerned about whether or not we could move forward. We did also engage in discussion with BBMR and worked with the analysts there to try to do some budget modifications. And, after redoing projections, there was still, it was still kind of challenging, And I should make clear, the vendor did say that the suspension was not tied to arrears, but rather they were concerned about continuing on with the lack of an agreement. Okay.
I in my notes, the reason why I asked this question also fundamentally on the DRT-DOA connection is, explaining the overlap and cross-communication between DRT system, particularly, and this has been something that's been perennial, so I think it's timely to just put this on the front. The overlaps, Data Management Resources LLC, the Government of Guam Financial Management Information System, GFMIS, under DOA. When we had DOA here, and hopefully Ed Byrne arrives, we had DOA here earlier on their oversight. We asked, because we're getting mixed presentations on the GFMIS operability. Some agencies are saying it's working great. On the side of the house that is HR, it's pretty good. We're good to go. On the side of the house, on the financial, can be challenging, but okay. But a lot of this has been discussed in the way of modules. As a matter of fact, training and modules that are, of course, operated by Department Administration. And there was a presentation that they are either adding to or have added modules that are supposed to accomplish true connectivity between DOA and all of the line agencies for which they're responsible for. And for decades now, and I sympathize with the staff, really. For decades now, we've had this discussion on, connectivity and how really that lag between all of the accounts, accountability, money, everything coming into DOA, linked with rev and tax. I mean, those systems have to talk to each other. So I want to just ask right now on the record, is that playing a role here? And do you have the modules that connect directly between DOA and DRT for upgrades for real-time communication?
So you're absolutely right. On the HR side, there have been, that's working great. And I believe Mr. Espiritu will can certainly provide more information with regard to the experience and the perhaps the the disconnect, maybe, if you would like to call it that, between the systems. We aren't currently integrated the way we'd like to be integrated. And to your point, I believe there are plans to ensure that comes, but unfortunately, we are not at that stage. Director Byrne can probably indicate that. What we did experience, or what we have experienced, is that what is shown in the system, sometimes it conflicts. So, for example, we are keeping track of the budget that we have, and then Mr. Espiritu will go into the system, and then there is a disconnect there. It's not showing accurate figures, and I don't know if there's a step that's missing. Certainly, we know that on the DOA side, they are also short-staffed, and I believe there are some seasoned employees that are no longer there. So, of course, that only adds to the challenges that we have.
So, yeah. Mr. Espiritu, maybe I'll go to you on this, because I think this is going to be my $31 million question. I'm still not clear on whether or not the GFMIS, because I know that at the department administration level, like I said, we can't ask Ed this right now, but the DOA level, the GFMIS really was supposed to have a parallel run and then supersede the AS400 and basically take over. Is that the case with Rev and Tax? Could that be some of the problems with the contractual issues? You need to pull that microphone close to you, Mr. Spear. You've got a very good voice, but it's a little bit soft.
Yes, the system is, it took some time for the data. I believe it's the amount of data and the transfer of the data from the old system to the new FMIS, but I could see that its capabilities are better, being that it's cloud-based, and in terms of we're able to upload documents efficiently, and it's a much faster process.
So maybe this is a dual question, Marie and Mr. Espiritu, and maybe anybody else who would want to chime in. You speak to the proprietary nature of the information, and of course the non-disclosure, which we all, not only appreciate, but it's the law. So I don't quite understand this, and I think we need to cut to the chase on this. Are you saying now that you don't have access because of your lack of a contract to your own system information, the proprietary tax information?
So we do have, I guess, what you call read-only access, if you will. We're just not able to, we are unable to transact certain things. So, for example, collection's still able to accept payments and so forth because they can see anything that was previously assessed. What we won't be able to do is, if there's any accruals, and so forth, the system does that for us automatically. So,
Mr. Espiritu, in your experience, are you saying then, so is this basically a lockout? And then in your experience, have you ever had a lag to where you're still able, or anybody in the panel, still able to navigate even on a pending contract?
Being that there are two different systems, there is a gap there where the information on the AS400, we have to reconcile it with the FMIS, and that may cause some discrepancies.
Okay. I know you had this in your presentation, but I think for clarity, because it was a voluminous presentation, which is good. That's what we asked for. But I think there's people are listening, and so just for the record, once again, what systems are up and what systems are not operational?
Okay, people are able to renew and register vehicles. So they're up. I should preface that with all online systems, system capability is not available.
Okay.
So we are
all online systems are not
all
available.
Online is not available. There are some branches that have remained unaffected, So, for example, passport is not affected. Driver's license, because it is cloud-based, and I will say that I guess the vendor was unaware that it would have affected driver's license. Oddly enough, motor vehicle or vehicle registration is unaffected in that walk-in customers can come in and renew or register. So they're, with the exception of online, they are able to serve customers. Driver's license, unfortunately, while we do have a different vendor for driver's license, it is a cloud-based vendor. And so what happens is when somebody comes in and tries to renew their driver's license or what have you, the transaction interfaces with the legacy system, the AS400. It generates a payment receipt, and in order for the credential to be printed, that payment receipt is needed. And so that's what's affected that. So the staff has resorted to going back really to kind of a manual process. Under the guidance of the acting motor vehicle administrator and myself, we have instructed the staff that they should not turn away customers. When they come, make sure that their applications are complete. You screen their documents for validity, and you also conduct vision tests. In addition to that, you manually schedule the persons that have come in for later time. So we've resorted to that. While it's not ideal, we understand we need to do something, and basically that's what we're faced with.
Okay, I think this is a critical area, and I just have two more questions, and I'll go to my colleagues.
Sure.
So we've been getting a lot of concerned individuals with regard to tax remittance, particularly BPT and other taxes. And so basically, this is kind of the line of questioning so we can let folks know what's going on. Like I said, we're hearing directly from constituents and the GRT issue. If a taxpayer was unable to file their GRT after the 20th due to the system outages, what happens to them?
Well, that is something that I have yet to discuss with legal. We know we're coming up on a couple of deadlines. Taxpayer Services Administrator has expressed his concern over that. We need to ensure, and we were hopeful that the situation would have been remedied before today. But, as of today, it's still being worked on at this time. And so we will certainly go out with a release on what the public needs to do should we fail to execute an agreement by the end of today.
Okay, so I know we've done this with property tax, so I have to ask the direct question on this. If it's not by their own doing, will also these penalties and other associated costs be waived?
So typically, barring any restriction of my authority, then I would say yes. And certainly I can ask either the Tax Enforcement Administrator or the Taxpayer Services Administrator to chime in should that be not be the case.
I'd like that to happen because I don't know whether we're going to need another governor's declaration or the like, but please, those that are responsible, can you opine whether or not the waivers would be available at the director's discretion or at your administrative discretion? Please go on the record, identify yourself.
I'm Carolyn Rivera, Tax Enforcement Administrator, and the same for Jerome, I believe. There are programs or systems in place in tax law and in guidelines that we follow when it is the agency's
Error
or failure.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
We're not beating each other up. We're saying what's happening. And
Right.
It's a failure in the system. It's a failure in the system.
If it's relating to agency failure, for instance, or our neglect or our overlook, then waiving penalties, abating interest is a consideration for each assessed tax during that period.
So my question from one concern or several concerned individuals, I guess the formal process. So is it formal, or are you going taxpayer by taxpayer? Or, Marie, I'm just going to make a recommendation at this point. I think with the fact that we've got another 20th deadline coming up, we've crossed over one with regard to the real, kind of full shutdown, essentially, of services. I think you're just going to have to come down with a circular and a policy so that it shouldn't be ad hoc. It should be across the board with all tax filers.
Noted, and yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I guess the thing is, I don't know that this question can be answered right now, and I'll go to my colleagues. Do you have a timeline? And are you, my direct question is, are you engaged with DOA and the governor's office to be able to execute any type of emergency procurement? My experience, unless you're going to have a straight out subsequent legal battle on costs and what's presented to you, my experience is when we're in this position and there's a failure to have negotiated a contract, we're really kind of on the losing side of this, but yet the services must go forward. Are those active discussions?
Yes, and actually we've had discussions prior even to the temporary suspension. So we have done that. We have actually, there's a draft that's going back and forth. Again, we needed to proceed carefully, because we don't want to be in violation of any Guam law or any procurement law. And so we have, we have DOA involved, we've gotten GSA involved, and so forth. The governor certainly expressed her concern, and our own legal counsel as well is involved. So yes, it's trying to come to an agreement with regard to, the details and so forth.
Director Lezama and team, I look forward to, first of all, I want to thank you for your engagement on the performance-based budgeting. I think that your responses and what you've been putting forward, and I think you'll agree, we gave you a targeted area because it's complicated, and especially like you said, Director, with tax policy, it's even more complicated. So I want to appreciate everything that you've been able to accomplish. I think all of the measures that you've discussed in your presentation can be vetted prior to your public hearing on your budget. I think that you've made some observations here that we can work on to maybe come to solutions. Some of them might be either verbiage in the budget to adjust some things or some other movement there. So I'm not going to drill down on the detail of your presentation. I think it was good information. It's good for the committee to be able to work on. So I don't have questions. Maybe my colleagues do. But I wanted to concentrate on this because this is the thing that's really of urgency to the public right now. So thank you for that information. And I think we'll drill down on our pre-budget meeting and then also on your budget hearing to be able to fix whatever might be necessary going forward. So I'm going to move to my colleagues now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Speaker Blas, you recognize? You were here before me, so you definitely get to, no, yeah, the co-chair will, I'm sorry.
No, right there.
I'm sorry, my bad. Yes. Senator Taidagui, co-chair of the committee, excuse my my absent-mindedness.
No worries.
Please proceed.
There's a lot going on, Mr. Chair, at Revenue Tax, and I'm sure the public is very anxious to see and hear from Revenue Tax on what solutions that we can avail them of on the inconvenience that's been causing a lot of the public and confusion. We're seeing a domino effect. What happened with our property taxes in the CRER report, reporting at 21 million shortfall in certain areas. And but one of my biggest concerns is we push so hard to have online service to alleviate some of the workforce that is unable to take positions at Revenue Tax. As you mentioned earlier, you know how you're losing people who are retiring out, trying to get people to come in. And I think the one good thing that you did mention is to provide some incentives to bring people who have retired to come back in and be able to, double dip, kind of like teachers, like you mentioned earlier. So I think things like that need to be acted upon right away. Enough talking, enough saying, oh, well, we're looking into this, we have to move. And it's concerning too, because even in the budget, in FY26, there was no increase that you requested for. However, we're having so many issues with the automated systems, the online services, the contractual stuff. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, about 625,000 had moved from contractual service into personnel. And with a lot of the vacancies that you have at Reventax, you would think that you would use this funding, for areas as far as contractual. First, I greatly appreciate what you provided to us. Take this home and analyze it a little bit more, and maybe, like the chair mentioned, my co-chair mentioned, that we're going to have another hearing and meet with you to try and, help you find solutions right away. Mm-hmm. I want to thank you, Maria, especially for calling me up on the weekend, knowing that you're working on weekend, because people need to know, the work that Reventax does, it doesn't stop once Friday hits at 5 o'clock. There's so many employees that are still sticking around trying to play catch up, especially because of the shortfall. So I appreciate that call that you made, because I'm very, very concerned of being held hostage from a vendor, regarding the online services. And I say held hostage because of this. But then Reventax dropped the ball. Last year, we should have addressed this situation last year. Mm-hmm. In July, in June, because we knew this timeline was coming up. It wasn't done. Now, you and I talked about emergency procurement on the phone too as well, what we can do, but like you said, you're absolutely right. Emergency procurement, we still have to be very careful moving forward. Now, we do know that DOA has moved from the vendor that you have that's basically holding hostage, the online services, and they're able to move, off that grid, per se. New technology is very important, and actually, it can come at a lesser cost. AI has come into play to help reprogram and access algorithms that are a lot quicker and faster, that we can move forward. And this is an area in which Reventax really needs to look into on cost efficient and not go back to the old guard when there's new technology available. So when I'm trying to understand why services, which you are definitely needed in contractual services, did you move money away from those services to personnel when you can't even fill vacancies? Please, and thank you. Sorry for that long. And hello to Reventax, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
I will start, and then again, I will defer to Mr. Espiritu. Okay, but as I mentioned, and I have since spoken to Mr. Espiritu, and I've said, we can't do that. Our budget is, well, it's not fixed, right? It is, there are line items there. We can make modifications, and we have questioned that before, because at one point in time, it was like, wait a minute, we have nothing set aside for mail, for stamps or what have you. So while it seems like nothing was budgeted for it, the reality is we knew that we couldn't exceed a ceiling. And, Mikkel, having come from BBMR, was very familiar, or is very familiar, with budget modifications. With that said, I did tell him, I said, it comes out very confusing, and I think it only adds to the challenge of tracking actual expenditures while you do keep to the ceiling. you know, you don't have the actual or any, at least a fraction of the money indicated under certain things. And if I may, maybe if you feel that it warrants further explanation, maybe, you know, he can.
Hafaday, Senator, yes. The budget modifications to salary benefits and overtime was due to our staffing challenges, where we put currently we have approximately 41 recruitments in progress, but there's like a delay with the recruitment process where like the applicants we do interviews and they either do not accept the position or they decline interview outright. And to address the issue with the current maintenance contract, we actually we're in the process, like starting Friday and going to today, we're gonna have to recall almost all of the recruitment GG1s.
You're going to have to what? I'm sorry.
Recall the recruitment GG1s to provide available funding for the
So if I may, Senator, it's really just hailing back to making the modifications so that the money is switched over, you know, to the proper item that we wish to pay. So,
Maria, the person who just sat next to you, was she sworn in? Okay, hi.
Yes.
Okay, and can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I was. By Mr. Pakaigui.
Could you go ahead? Yeah,
yes.
Go ahead and introduce yourself and your position.
My name is Tammy. I'm a program coordinator with Rev Tax. I had been there actually in 2020, 2022 when the pandemic hit. And a lot of these processes that are being discussed are kind of over and above our heads. So once we get the recruitments out, and they like to call them bubbles. So in the EHRP system, which is under the GFMIS, once those bubbles hit the agency and it goes over that mark, it's kind of out of our control. So we do follow-ups, but as a lot of you up on this panel know, it takes a while. It takes a while for the other side to process those things. We don't understand those internal controls that happen at those other agencies, so we're at the mercy of that. And then we're sort of playing this like catch-up, balancing, kind of pushing this, pulling this. So when we do the budget mod, that's not immediate. It would go into personnel, go into contract. We're kind of just bumping it back and forth, right? Like dodgeball. So when we're doing all of this, we're just trying to, again, balance with the mechanisms at play. We're working with sort of a 20th century infrastructure for the gamut of 160,000 plus people on the island of Guam. So although we're trying actively to get all the recruitments pushed through and whatnot, we have maybe at the most that I've seen in my history with DRT, like 200 employees. Now, if you look at it from a perspective of per capita, it's 160,000, 200 people pushing that through. And a lot of those things, anywhere from like paper to the upgrades of like TurboTax or whatever you want to call it, just to make the programs run faster or to make our frontliners more effective. To make it faster for the manumco or for the disabled or for the compromised. So that's kind of what we're working with. There's always these sort of like little things floating above our heads, and we just try really, really hard to just plug up all of those gaps. So with this, the vendor infrastructure system, this has been, like was said, passed back and forth, an ongoing historical sort of issue, right? It's a legacy system, and we're trying to, part and parcel, without saying too much, figure out ways that we can advance that into the 21st century. So we're trying to move away from that, but as you all know, there are laws, there are processes, there are procedures, so we have to jump through those hoops, and we're at the mercy of the powers that be. So we try to do as much as we can,
However, it's very taxing, especially when you're just putting out fires day to day and making sure that 160,000 people, that demographic is being served, especially people that they don't have any money, so they come, they're homeless, or even with like the veterans that we're so happy to serve, you know, with their license plates, you know, that was the mandate, right? We waive all those fees, but at the same token, we're still having this bulk and girth of people that we're serving, but there's really no I guess, support for that.
Thank you, Tammy, for that, explanation that we've heard countless times. You know, you've said nothing different, nothing at all. You didn't explain why you dropped the ball, in renewing this contract, so that we're not in this predicament of our late property tax. We're not in this predicament where people can't go online, especially those who are off island. 160,000 people with 200 at rev and tax. Well, not 160,000 go and knock on rev and tax's door. It's those businesses that we need to keep going. So I'm not sure what you have offered to us other than, you're trying. And I don't doubt that. You're trying, but we need to think outside the box right now. I mean, this system is failing, and it's ridiculous. We're going back to the ice ages right now and having to do this manually, which, thank God, there is a process in place in the event, because with cybersecurity, once we go into the 20th century, cybersecurity is going to take a toll on maybe hijacking anything, and shutting systems down, that we're going to have a standard operating procedure in the event that happens. And that is to go offline and go manually. Now, the question is, how do we avoid the interruption? And that is, do you have satellite areas open up to address those who cannot go online? Do you have phone calls that you can make from people who are actually off island, who pay their GRTs, who have property here on Guam, and now they can't go online? Those who need to renew their business license, who are off island, want to renew it, but they can't do it because they're not here. These are the areas that I was hoping you would come in front of us and tell us that this is in place right now. We've got an education program out there to our public to tell them where they can go in certain areas to avoid. Now, everybody's going to rev and tax. Talk about it being long lines. And this is a tax time. It's going to be jam-packed up there. But you need to find satellite places to make it easier for people to come and go. I hope you're doing that. Tell us what you just told us how you're doing things online, but that's not going to be enough, because I can tell you right now, Maria, and it's still a big problem, and I've talked to you about this. Try to have somebody call Rev and Tax to get any kind of information right now. I challenge you right now, call Rev and Tax. See if they pick up the phone. They don't. I've had my staff call constantly, and they're not there to pick up the phone. So we need to service our people better, and we need solutions right now. And then we already know the ball was dropped, and we're now playing catch up to this emergency that people can't go online. And we're not even in a cyber attack right now, and our people can't even go online. That's ironic. Now, you mentioned earlier about the cannabis board, and it was brought up, in your presentation, that there was a round table, and that the current composition of the board, the status of the cannabis license applicant, including the laboratory testing facility application qualifications, board's role in developing hemp program. Has any of these updates for the committee on these items that were talked about in the last meeting, has the board come forward since and made any changes to that?
So there has been some progress, ma'am. Number one, we've held 2 meetings, right, as required by law. The minutes, the the agency head that had agreed to do the minutes, unfortunately, went elsewhere. But with that said, our staff took it upon themselves, to go ahead and update that and circulate it to the board for approval. And so that has been done. We have been contacted by some of the applicants with regard to clarification of rules, and as well, there has also been a discussion with the chair with regard to having to consider some of the suggestions that have come up. I did note, I think, in recent passage of bills that there were things that were passed which would render that some of those discussions moot. But if I may, ma'am, let me go back to.
If you can, let me just finish because I know my colleagues, I'm taking up a lot of time for them, and maybe the questions they can ask, but just let me finish on my line on this one. And then, so the RPA, system, okay, we talked about, there was a bill that was brought up, right? And this robotic process automation, you said it was not needed, based on your testimony, okay? So is that still the case? And do you think that the properly implemented RFP pilot could provide any added layer of operational support by automating these tasks, like data entry or system to systems, now that you're coming into this situation where, the ball was dropped on the other process of online? So do you still feel that you don't need the RFP?
So when we did the walkthrough with the vendor, it was discovered that it was not needed, but rather there needed to be some, perhaps just a reprogramming of sorts. It was because RPA is just that, right? It's robotic, but it involves repetitive input. It will take away from that process, or it will enhance having to do that process.
Okay, thank you for that. I just want to make sure we're still on that same track because I did not move forward with that bill. So that being said, coming up to FY26, like I said, you did not increase your budget from FY25 to FY26. It stayed status quo. So the anticipation of, trying to get this vendor who's holding hostage, the online services, is there any increase that's anticipated? I know you and please correct me if I'm wrong, that to ask you these questions because you are in litigation right now, and if it's something that you have to hold off, I totally understand.
Yeah, so we are in negotiation stage, and there, as I mentioned early on, so we did not increase because we did not expect that there was going to be a significant year-over-year increase relating to, as someone called it, the cost of doing business. This body, and I've heard it compared to some people, I'm fairly new to the government of Guam, but it has been noted before that historically contracts or perhaps agreements have been continued via purchase order or what have you. And so, when we choose to, I'm in the difficult position of, what do you do when a vendor comes and, I'm just throwing this out there. What do you do when a vendor is charging you nearly $150,000 more versus the previous year? And you didn't take that into consideration because you had to submit your budget in advance. And you can certainly not, and the notice of such an increase came well after the budget was finalized and after hearings were done. So, it's people complain that it's a cycle that hasn't been broken. And as we are trying, unfortunately, to try to correct some of the processes in accordance with procurement and Guam law, it is what it is. I'm not going to deny and as the director of the agency, I'm not going to deny that perhaps this could have been done better. But there are, as I mentioned, and everything has gone up. So with regard to vendor contracts, they're not, I mean, they also too are trying to pass along in what they call costs associated with having, with doing business that they claim have not been passed on to us. It's difficult to prove. I don't know with regard to the technology or the maintenance part of it. I don't know if, and we've certainly gone back to the Office of Technology to say, hey, look, based on the determination of need, can you confirm whether or not this is reasonable or is it exorbitant? And so, we're trying to deal with a lot of different input, and it's just sometimes it's difficult to proceed. So
thank you, Maria. And so we do anticipate that you're going to be asking for more than 17.7. I mean, considering you didn't ask for an increase last time, is that your anticipation that you will be asking more than what FY26 gave you?
Well, I've since had a talk with Mr. Espiritu, and we did put in for contractual obligations. Now, whether or not those will change, between the time it's discussed and passed and the time, because remember, of course, it takes effect for the fiscal year. That's something we likely, we can't control. But I will say that it is better than the previous budget, and again, I've had that discussion in that, hey, look, while the budget allows for modifications, we really need to put things, or at least a reasonable amount where they belong, so that you can better track exactly what expenditures are coming in.
So again, the question, will it be higher than the 17.7?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so that's something we have to anticipate. You've got 3 attorneys under your belt, probably most than any other of the agencies, 3 attorneys to help you and to guide you and give you, information on how to move forward, especially with the shutdown. I'm just surprised that with 3 attorneys, we're still at this crossroad right now. Not crossroad, we're at this predicament that has held us hostage. So I'm just really surprised at that. I have other questions, and I want to apologize. I did mention that I thought my office did send you a list of questions to provide. Much of it was answered here, but I do have quite a bit more that I will send to you after this hearing, so that maybe we can get those answered. Because I know that the Oversight Chair is going to have, my co-oversight chair to Rev and Tax might have another hearing on the budget, so maybe we can address it then. But thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to answer my questions, and looking forward to hearing some more answers from you. Okay, thank you.
Susmasi, Co-Chair Senator Tailigui, and so what we'll also do is, we'll make sure the office gives you ample notice when we would do the pre-budget hearing. And when we do pre-budget hearing with Rev and Tax, then we can also have those questions, and we'll work on it together in the budget process. Speaker Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the panel for being here this morning. A lot of the discussion, and good for good reason, is basically on a systems failure, whether it be mechanical or human. But I guess, let me start this question off first. How many vendors are we talking about that you're in negotiation with, or that you have to be able to provide your operations? How many vendors?
Well, we have one relief that takes care of a lot of the tax stuff, to include motor vehicle, to include online, and so forth. That one vendor takes care of the majority of the contracts that we have. Then there is another one for driver's license.
So you only have 2 vendors?
I would say, would you say that? Well, of course, putting aside, like say, cleaning, and so forth. I would say it's literally just limited to those two.
Okay, so, because my question is, are you up to date? I mean, are you in litigation with all of your vendors or in negotiation with all of your vendors?
The driver's license one, we actually have an active agreement. I think that will expire in January of next year. And then the vendor that we're in negotiations with right now, there are different contracts. So, and they all expire, at different times.
Okay, so then let me switch it over now to contracts.
Okay.
Because you have one vendor with multiple contracts, that's what you're saying?
Yes.
With those contracts, are you up to date with all, or where are you with the contracts in negotiation?
Right now, it's the maintenance part of it, which includes a lot of the tax. It's the tax system. It's, as I mentioned, and I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me, but income tax, W-1s, W-2s. It's the online, and so forth. It's the ability to go online for those specific areas to include vehicle registration, and basically a lot of it are applications that work in tandem with the legacy system, the AS400.
Okay, and so this one vendor has got multiple contracts that basically provide the services or the platforms for most, if not all, of your major revenue generating?
For DRT, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, let me clarify. The major contract that we're negotiating right now is the one that has the bulk of the, as I mentioned, the tax systems and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for clarity, I know that you mentioned it earlier, but just to clarify, when did that contract expire?
It expired at the end of the last fiscal year.
Okay. Was there money owed to that vendor prior to that contract expiring?
So with regard to that vendor, there was the issue tied to the real property valuation, not as, I guess I should explain how this is. The DRT purchased a system or program, if you will, called Momentum. And that particular program, I've been told, with a couple of the revaluations, that it is an off-the-shelf product. The vendor himself has indicated it's an off-the-shelf product. It is something that he would do maintenance for. So it's not as if we didn't have we didn't have a contract for the application itself, but he had provided maintenance for it. And so we started to experience problems with that. And the maintenance part of it is where, we had not, how do I say this? So we didn't owe for that per se, but we did not have a maintenance contract after a while in place with that vendor.
Okay, but the question was, did you owe any money to this vendor prior to that contract we're talking about expiring in the end of the fiscal year?
So the contract was bundled. It was bundled with the subscription for the renewal of that program. So I've been told it's kind of like Microsoft Office. You purchase it, you have to renew your subscription and so forth. So yes, for FY24, there was a balance on the maintenance part of it, and we had gone back and we had advised the vendor that the way to get to that, you need to submit a government claim for that. The amount The amount, I should say, that is the example that I had used. The amount was $494,000 for for 1 year, and the next year it shot up to $646,000. And we knew that we needed to proceed carefully, even being that the vendor was considered sole source. So, you know, in the discussions that followed, the vendor said, even if you pay, you know, the subscription for which they manage, even if you pay the subscription, I don't know if the program will work. And so then we decided that it was too, and he acknowledged that it is a lot of money for a product that was off the shelf and was likely outdated.
Ms. Lizama, you had described to me something that happened basically over 2 fiscal years to a tune of over $1 million. Don't you think that that's probably a good reason why the vendor then would, you're in the predicament you are right now with that same vendor? I don't understand how we can go 2 fiscal years and not try to resolve this issue.
We have had many discussions with that vendor. And again, as I mentioned earlier, he has said multiple times that what we are experiencing today is not as a result of any arrears. He was concerned about the lack of an executed contract.
Yes.
You know, in fact, I guess back in 2020, the same situation had occurred. I'm not making excuses for it, but in 2020, the same situation had occurred. But the difference between then and now is, you know, we are 1 month later into trying to execute a contract as opposed to that situation. But with regard to the length of time, that's a totally different matter. It is not tied at all to the issue that we are experiencing today.
Well, the issue that we're experiencing today comes down to you have no online services available. We have a very severely, I guess, weakened system to be able to capture revenue. By the way, has anybody done an assessment as to how much revenue we're losing as a result of this system breakdown? And when I say losing, in a year-to-year comparison, how much money were we supposed to collect over the last couple of months as compared to what we had collected before? And how much can we anticipate to lose? Obviously, we're going to be losing in as far as interest and penalty for land tax, right?
Okay. Well, with regard to the payments, it's not that the payments were not received. They just haven't, they're in a suspense account, to my understanding, and they have not interfaced.
I don't want to get into that, because for me, quite honestly, it's a very sour note.
Okay.
Okay, okay. I have a $241.75 legacy story with revenue and tax. I know about suspense accounts.
Okay.
That's how much I've got in there. But so we are holding it, but how long are we going to hold it? My concern is these are funding, this is money, revenue, that the community relies on so that government services will be provided, and how much of that is going to impact that, and how long are we going to wait for it to happen before that money gets released, so that the services can be provided to the community. So it's a trickle down. And I guess the simple question is, have we done any assessment on what this impact, or what this stall, what this predicament we are in right now has resulted in for revenues supposed to be collected by the government?
Well, I do know, I don't know if you would call it, it likely includes an assessment, but I do know that the tax enforcement administrator has been in discussion with DOA with regard to the suspense accounts. So I do know that that is happening. I don't know where that is right now, but it has commenced, and it's been ongoing.
Okay. But surely you started to look into this at the start of the fiscal year, knowing that you didn't have the services of your vendor since that start, right? When did the vendor suspend his services to the agency?
On the 20th of March.
20th of March.
Correct.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry, the 21st, Saturday.
21st of March. And when did your system start to break down? Because I've been hearing revenue and tax in the news prior to 21st of March.
I'm sorry?
When did your system start to break down?
Well, we have been experiencing, as I mentioned in the thing, we have aging equipment. We experience intermittent internet connectivity. I think with regard to with regard to certain things, there are, if things happen, that's part of the maintenance contract. We certainly call upon them to find out what is wrong. We call upon the Office of Technology to try to help us get through it. So we've been managing to do our responsibilities with what we have. It may not be ideal. People can certainly argue that there's a faster, more efficient way to do that, but we aren't there yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How does that answer the question about when did you start to experience a breakdown in your system?
Okay. I apologize, sir. I guess what I'm trying to get at is
I'm looking for a date, not a reason.
A full breakdown? I mean, I don't know if you could...
The start of it.
Could define that.
Well, when did you start seeing that, okay, well, that system broke down, and now this system is breaking down, and whether it be human or technical...
I don't think I can pinpoint to any particular date because it has been happening. I do know that prior to my coming to DRT, there were federal monies that enabled us to procure new computers. And of course, computers, no sooner do they come out, they're obsolete, basically is what a technological person would say. But, I would say that over time, I can't put out a particular date, but over time, you start to see that there are switches that are broken. We're dealing with a legacy system that needs to be updated. I think we're on the IBM Power 7, and I now know that there's a version of Power 11, so I apologize, I can't give you a particular date, but it's been happening over the years that we see one thing fail, and then we do a fix, and then we see other things fail. I don't know how I can answer your question. Okay.
Did you receive federal monies to be able to fix your systems?
So prior to my coming on board, there were CARES Act funds, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe the equipment was purchased. We were provided ARP funds. However, what we did have for ARP funds was used basically for the revaluation. We did not. Every time we would have a fix for a certain system, then we're told, oh, it's your power source. Oh, it's your, it's your switch. Oh, it's the server.
How much total money did you get?
For ARP?
Both the CARES and ARP.
I don't know what CARES, maybe Tammy might remember because I wasn't there, but ARP, I think we ended up with $3.5 million.
Tammy? Tammy, what is your last name?
am one.
Okay, thank you. Did you know?
I just know that when the pandemic hit, there was certain funding that had come in, filtered through, and that we were able to use towards some equipment, a little bit of infrastructure here and there, so.
How much was that?
Off the top of my head, sir, I couldn't tell you. I know that we got like a lump sum, however, that was reduced.
Be interesting to know how much you got and where it went to. Okay?
I can try to get that information for you.
Well, you know, I
and
mean,
send
I
it to
kind
your
of figure
office.
that it's probably something you should have brought here.
Yeah.
Okay? Real ID. Are we in compliance now?
We've always been in compliance, sir, but what we came across, and you're probably talking about the fact that they will not scan at TSA. Now, that is directly tied to the vendor. The vendor only recently affirmed that TSA has finally uploaded the specimens so that when you do go through TSA screening and your ID is scanned, that it would be recognized. So that was tied, the delay in that was tied to the vendor working with TSA. And maybe Ms.
I
Pangilinan.
rethink that answer again, Mary. I really would rethink that.
I'm not sure I
Because
follow.
When TSA has to come to my office because nobody at your department is answering any of their calls, it had nothing to do with the vendor.
I think you might be mistaking it perhaps, sir, with the recertification. That we have since addressed, and we have actually submitted all the documents needed. We've spoken
So it had
directly.
nothing to do with the vendor, right?
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry,
Okay.
I misunderstood you because I thought when you said real ID, but it was the recertification process. So we have since been recertification of the real ID.
Right.
That's the issue. And so we did speak to Sarah Little
Okay.
at the DHS TSA office, and she has told me, she knows, she says, we only recently have taken charge or have been placed in charge of the Real ID recertification, and assured me that, they would work with us. In fact, once she reviews the documentation that we've provided, which was in concert with the vendor and with OTEC, a follow-up site visit will occur. We will certainly include you in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, do the real IDs issued by the Guam Department of Revenue and Taxation, are they in compliance with the national standard?
Yes.
So you can now use your IDs.
Yes. I mean, as I meant,
Inclusive of the ones that
where
were
the
issued previously? Inclusive of the ones that have already been issued, let's say, a year ago?
yes.
Senator, what we understand is as of last week, our vendor who is responsible for ensuring that it is accurate TSA accepts it, said that it was uploaded and it is effective. And that's an email from our vendor saying it is effective.
Okay, can you just, for the record, state who you are?
I
I know who you
apologize.
are, but I know we have to state it.
I apologize. My name is Zita Pangilinan. I'm the acting administrator for the Division of Motor Vehicles.
Okay. So all real IDs that have since been issued or were previously issued are now in compliance and can be utilized. Is that the correct statement?
This is what was affirmed by our vendor, who
Okay.
is responsible for that, yes.
Okay, okay. Well, so,
And we are currently undergoing our recertification for Real ID. And as our director spoke, we have submitted all our documentation and now are waiting for a date for site visit.
Okay. So you submitted, when did you submit your documentation for recertification?
It was due on March 20th, and so we submitted that. However,
So you got the extension, right?
I'm sorry?
So you did get the extension? It's amazing how I know all of this information. So yeah, you got the extension?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I want to make sure that. And I apologize because I didn't see you on the email string that was shared with me. So I would have directed it to you, Lita, but thank you for providing it.
Newly appointed.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to need is, I'd like to know, I'm sure the committee would like to know, what and in your assessment of all as a result of the system's breakdown, what has that meant? What does that mean as far as lost revenues? Okay? Inclusive of historically interest and penalties that could have been realized had the systems been functional. Because I think that one of those areas is already in the area of property tax with, right, the first installation, now that you moved everything.
Yes, actually, yes, it's just as long as they pay before December 31st.
Sure, but had this system been in place and you had kept
had the system been in place, we likely would have just missed the first installment.
Yeah, and so what have we realized in as far as loss?
We don't have that in place right now. We've not done an assessment.
I'd like to be able to know that, so that way we can also plan, because it's causing a nightmare for us in as far as planning, not so much next year's budget, but making sure we have enough for this year's budget. Nobody anticipated a systems breakdown, especially in the most lucrative, for lack of a better term, time of the year for the government of Guam. Okay, and so we have to anticipate what your sister agencies are going to be coming in and saying, hey, we didn't get our allotment, and we trace it back, and we didn't get our allotment because we couldn't collect, and we need to be able to prepare for that. Okay.
Noted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Dismasi, Mr. Speaker, Frank Blas. Vice Speaker Tony Yada, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel for being here. Marie, Madam Director, what is the current wait time that the public can expect when they go up to revenue tax, whether it's processing their income taxes or things like that? What are they looking at for standing in line at this time?
So with regard, in the different areas, for example, we do have with income tax, and by the way, this continues even with the temporary suspension. Our income tax branch offers tax filing assistance to seniors, and that takes place Monday through Friday from 8 to 12. And depending upon their individual needs, right, I don't believe that the wait is long. We have been experiencing longer wait times for the passport office. Passport continues to run. It is not affected by the suspension. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing a lot of families coming in anticipation of summer travel. So that has been, has resulted in longer wait times. Again, that branch is also affected by staffing shortage. So you would have people come in, and then we screen for documentation, and then they're called, and then they're processed. And then with regard to driver's license, driver's license actually has improved, except that it only recently started to pick back up again. But for several months, and the staff can confirm this, for several months, there were virtually no lines.
No, I'm just talking about during this period with the system down.
I see.
Yeah.
So obviously there wouldn't be any long wait times at driver's license because we're doing things, we're approaching a different process, or we're employing a different process. So with regard to vehicle registration, sure, there has been an uptick in foot traffic, but I've heard from a couple of people, they went in, they went out. So I guess it depends on the day of the week, the time you go, and so forth.
Now that we're in this tax season, right? It's the worst time for it to happen. What's the current average processing time for individual income tax returns within your office?
Are you talking internally?
Yeah.
Gosh, maybe Jerome, I guess the Taxpayer Services Administrator can kind of maybe speak somewhat to that.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jerome Muggan. I'm the Taxpayer Service Administrator. I don't exactly have, well, unfortunately right now, we're not able to actually process income tax returns with the systems being down. That's one of the things that we're not able to do right now. But for individual income tax returns, I believe the last, when we talk about processing and actually paying like full to a full, let's say, refund, I'm trying to recall what the last date that we refunded was. I think it was February 8th or 9th. And so, it's about, we try to keep it around, especially with the funding that needs to be approved, by DOA, but we try to keep it at or below like 6 weeks, from the filing of a return to the payment of the refund.
So the system failure created a backlog, right?
Yes, it is creating a backlog.
And how far is that backlog now? How many tax?
So one
taxpayers are
another thing we're not able to do is add any new records right now in this system. I did not bring the amount of returns that have been filed last week. Hard copy returns, that is, because people can't e-file their individual returns right now either. I can definitely get that. That wasn't something that I brought, but I can get the amount of returns that have been filed in the past week.
And does this apply also as well to the business privilege tax?
Well, for income tax returns, you can file hard copies. Unfortunately, you can't file anything online, and for BPT returns, since the systems have been down, people are not able to file any returns since the 21st because they can't file hard copy returns. By law, the e-filing is mandated. So that is, again, something that was talked about before, and we've, we have brought it up, and like Chair Duenas said, across the board, something to consider for everything.
Yeah, and it's, so of the so a little bit over $37 million that you guys have already processed, right, and paid out, what's the percentage that has been processed before the system issue began and the current backlog of error-free returns?
I'm sorry, I didn't bring that information. I can get it though. There are, it is being tracked, but I just don't have it today. I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Director Lizama, so it seems, where are we at currently now with, gosh, this negotiations, how much longer is this negotiations going to take? Are we going to wait until the end of the fiscal year before we...
No, we hope not. And I can assure you, Vice Speaker, many of us here on the team, we're worried, right? We're bothered by it. We can't, sleep. I'm constantly being asked about that. I do know, like I said, that there have been, it's governor's legal counsel, it's GSA legal counsel. Everybody is kind of working on that. I think there was one point that maybe only a couple had realized, and that was back in the 36th Guam legislature, and I believe it might have been Senator Perez's bill that passed into law, that you can no longer have a sole source agreement beyond a year. It was a year.
It's actually a year, but renewed up to yearly
For
for 5
additional-
years. And
yes.
yeah, just a point of information. I introduced a bill to fix that. It was rejected by
Okay.
the administration. They
Okay.
they asked not to, but I'm willing to introduce it again.
Okay. So, we needed to proceed carefully with that. We wanted to make sure that we weren't violating anything. And we hope, Vice Speaker, that we have something today, if not tomorrow. We've put forth a draft, and I think there are some sticking points that we need to get over. Unfortunately, what compounds the process is the fact that the legal counsel for the vendor is currently off island. So it's back and forth. It's having to keep the time difference in mind, and just, kind of trying to get a right time to talk and so forth.
So then, it appears then that in order to, I would just say, flip the switch to get everything back online, we need to come down to some type of solution to paying the vendor to turn the systems back on. And what is the plan going to be to, I guess, move in that direction?
So this is where there's conflicting information. At the start of this situation, I had many conversations with the vendor. I was assured that the temporary suspension had nothing to do with any arrears, but rather the lack of a long-term contract.
Right.
And so now there are different conversations taking place, and I believe there is concern over that point. I haven't been apprised of any information since before I came here, so I'm hoping that there would be updates that I can perhaps share maybe later on today.
Yeah. This is an oversight hearing, but we're not here to find out where your flaws are at and things like that, right? What we're here to do is work together so that we can take care of this issue and see how is it that we can move forward in ensuring that those taxpayers that want to pay their taxes have that ability to do so. Income taxes get processed, tax refunds go out accordingly. And how is this going to affect now the timeline as required by the courts? Right? Not because the administration wants to pay it out as quickly as possible, but what is required and mandated by the court to pay out. How does this pause now affect those timelines? Are we going to be in violation of that court order?
I guess, sir, that's what's adding to the length of time to negotiate it. We need to proceed carefully. And those things just need to be taken into consideration.
Has any conversation between the department and the vendor as to a modified contract, perhaps instead of another 4-year term, another 2 years to kind of get through this situation and come down to something that would be amenable for both, right? I mean, sometimes, and I understand the vendor's point, right? Just don't kick me out the door at the last moment and then you expect me to perform miracles trying to appease the government, and a lot of times that's where we find fault, is that we don't realize that the vendors too have employees they need to pay, contracts they need to uphold on their end, and this is a way that they continue to try to find a way to ensure that they have funding for the next year or so. And how is it that we're going to now move and ensure that both sides can find a remedy to the situation that we're currently in? Because I think we're in a stalemate, aren't we?
I hope they've gotten over that. But I will say this, yes, you're absolutely right, and we can't be insensitive to the vendors, employees, and their families. But with regard to how to make those payments, when we took a look at the previous contract, again, it was a similar situation. Certainly, it was executed a month earlier than what we're at today. And there was a way to address that, without, I believe, having to, violate anything. So we're hoping to do that. I do know, though, that the procurement, the limitation to a one-year sole source with the option to renew for up to four times, which would, in essence, make it 5 years. I do know that likely has changed the cost, and obviously can't discuss that at this time. But yeah,
that's understandable. Yeah. So I guess the end goal here is let's see what we can do to work together to get this process moving so that we be able to get these online services back going and taxpayers paying their taxes and the department doing the work that's needed to be done to facilitate our government operations. I mean, out of all branches, the Department of Revenue and Taxation, where all funding that funds this government comes through. We can't afford this shutdown or this stalemate to last any longer. And we don't want to see what the implications would be in the event that it goes further and we violate the court order of paying tax refunds. So I look forward to seeing how that we can work that, and I'll work with the chairman as well. And
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jesus Masi, Vice Speaker and Vice Chair of the committee. I don't know if I recognize already Senator Gumatauto. Thank you for being here, and Senator Perez. Senator Terlahi, it is you're next up.
Jesus Masi. Thank you for all your testimony, and I just want to clarify some things. So, how would it be resolved today? Is it going to be, because you've also testified that you're looking to do a new solicitation, and yet today you might have a temporary solution, or is it a permanent solution? And is this going to be a emergency contract or a long-term contract, or what would it be?
So that's what is being worked on right now. I believe we are limited to a one-year term. So it would be valid for the 1 year, and then, of course, if they exercise the option to renew for up to 4 more times.
Oh, so you're going to, okay, didn't you testify that you're going to do a new solicitation? So there will be no solicitation?
That was for the property tax roll.
Okay,
yeah.
So not for this maintenance
Not for this
contract?
one.
You're
Right.
looking to just do a new contract?
Correct, yeah.
with that. Oh, okay. Is it true that one of the issues is that the vendor claims to own the data of the government of Guam, and so you can't switch to another vendor because you wouldn't have that data?
So I know that there's something going virally, and there have been rumors and so forth, but no, the data belongs to the government of Guam.
All right, and then is this the same vendor that we had prior to 2021?
Yes.
And is this the same way that contract was, a new contract was made? It's kind of under duress, and then we had to negotiate?
I wasn't part of that, but in looking back at the previous contract, yes, the contract was certainly executed after the end of after several months had passed into the new fiscal year.
What happened prior? You told us that it expired at the end of the fiscal year, but what happened prior to the end of the fiscal year to try to have a new contract put in place?
So we had gotten information on that, and as I mentioned, we needed to proceed carefully. I couldn't confirm, but it was confirmed later as to whether or not we could even talk to the vendor. But I was assured by GSA, they're still your vendor, they're just lacking a maintenance contract. And so we had information that we were trying to use in order to move forward with the procurement process. And in trying to do that, we came across some things, of course, obviously, one of which was a funding issue. Again, we did not anticipate that the proposed amounts put forward, were
doubled,
significantly higher.
Were they doubled? You said it went from 1.2 million a year to 2.2 million a year in the new proposal?
I believe under the least expensive, which at that time we didn't know, we couldn't execute anyway, but I believe the cheapest option was at least 50% more. The second lowest one was, I think, at 70% more, and then the first one was probably 80. I'm not too sure. Don't have that in front of me.
But all of these options are sole source for 5 years?
Well, we found out that we couldn't proceed with 5 years.
1 year with 4-year renewals?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, but doesn't sole source also require that you put it out?
There's a checklist, yes. There is a checklist. You've got to have a determination of need. There's a checklist that happens, and yes, you still have to publish. It still needs to go through the Attorney General's office, and so forth.
So how? So you're saying you waited for GSA until after the end of the fiscal year to give you advice as to whether you could move forward in the way that you are moving forward right now?
That's not necessarily the whole thing. Of course, we had something, we were dealing with things internally, also preparing for other procurement, procurement matters. But that clarification was made later, and we needed to ensure that we were complying with that.
Are there any options moving forward for the government of Guam to source this contract or to do it in-house or anything like that?
We can certainly, put that out, probably through an RFP, and so forth. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not the one that actually does the procurement, but I would imagine that that's something we do.
Who does the procurement?
She is not here today. She's Katrina Hodges.
All right.
So,
and is the online access and payment system and reporting system, is that all one contract or are they all separate?
So the ability to do services or the services part of it is under that same maintenance contract.
Okay.
And so we have discovered the portal wherein you can make payments is still up. So apparently it has not affected our ability to accept payments. It is just, but I should back up and say, if we attempt to renew, for example, your registration online, then that's affected because you cannot complete that transaction, which will get you to the portal to pay. So, but if you were to, try to make a payment, online for something else, then you should be able to do that. We tested that, and that seems to be working.
So is that any use for the public? When should the public use that?
Actually, so if you have statements, that, for example, the property tax statements, and so forth, you can go ahead and do that. And I apologize, I don't have the list, in front of me.
So we can pay real property taxes. If we've received our statements, we can go and pay on the portal for payment.
I believe you can, yes.
All right. And BPT?
Unfortunately, no.
And the income, no,
No.
nothing on the
All
income.
those will need to be taken
All right.
over at either Treasurer of Guam or,
All
collection.
right. And the driver's license, it sounds like, so with the vendor with the driver's license, you're good, right? Your contract's good. The only problem is the interface with this other maintenance contract for payment. Can we separate it right now? Can you do that in-house? Just have them pay in-house and then issue them a driver's license, or you're not able? Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are unable to do that.
Why not?
Yeah. I guess, ma'am, because so once it gets from the cloud, the vendor, then it kind of interfaces to the legacy system,
Yeah,
and it
can we change
generates
that?
a payment receipt.
Can we just change that in-house?
I have asked, and unfortunately.
Who have you asked?
Yeah, I've asked the vendor. The vendor, when we initially talked, I asked the vendor, because the vendor's comments were driver's license and vehicle registration should not be affected. But we did a test. I went back. I said, yes, they are. Except for vehicle registration, it's the online ability or the capability. And for driver's license, it was kind of like the back end, right? So you can get through part of it. I had even asked the staff, is there a way that you can process these on the cloud side and then kind of let it sit in queue until it's ready, we are able to get a payment receipt and thus able to print the credential. But the fear is, if it waits too long in queue, it may disappear. And we decided that we didn't want to risk getting the customers further upset at having to come back again and resubmit all those.
Can you negotiate today to separate the driver's licenses out of that system, that payment system, so that it will never happen again? And you can always process either through your portal for payment or some other way, in-house, manually, anything, because what do you want people whose driver's license expires this month to do? What should you advise them?
That's true. Our temporary solution is to actually do manual extensions of the driver's licenses. But of course we realize that is of no help to anyone who perhaps is trying to get on the base or, is using that as their primary means of identification for travel.
Is there a way to bypass that in-house? Have you really tried all you can in-house to bypass that? Because it's a matter of payment, right? That they just need to pay you and then you can proceed, or can you proceed without payment? Can you just say no payment needed and then process the payment manually on the side?
I don't know if it's certainly not a matter of our not wanting to do it, but it's actually the actual override. We've certainly reached out, we've reached out to the Office of Technology, but they have not been able to do that.
Zita?
Yes, the interface is related to our Real ID requirements, and so pushing it through that we're really restricted with each card, and producing that card requires the interface to that payment system, if that makes sense. But at this point in time, we are aware of the concerns, and at this, we are working our driver's license system does expire in January. We are currently preparing for our market research and be prepared to get a full system in place.
All right. And so that it's not relying on another vendor, another contract?
We're working on all the specs with OTEC to be able to do such things.
I hope so. I know it seems like DRT is really at the mercy of these vendors, and every time I've called DRT in the past, when the licenses were not able to be issued and people were really complaining, they would always say it's a vendor issue. It's a vendor issue, and I don't know if it's our DRT Guam communication with the vendor, or do we have the experts here to work with this vendor, or did we just not try to contract earlier with the vendor? But Yeah,
Senator, we do have tracking mechanisms with regards to vendor specific. And so it is documented and what we're dealing with. And those are what we're using also to address our current need and plans.
all right. So cannot process income tax returns at all, cannot pay refunds at all, cannot add new records into the income tax system, but did you say people could file hard copies of the income tax? Yes, they can
Yes,
file
that's
their
correct. They
file
can
that
file hard copy returns by walking in and mailing, but
and paying. Is that what you said?
yes, they can
Okay.
also pay at Treasurer of Guam.
Okay.
And just somebody actually gave me the numbers for what was filed last week. The hard copy return, since the system has been down, is about 4,110 returns. So that backlog is returns filed that have not been started on processing.
So those
yet.
are all hard copy returns?
That's correct.
It's all right. And then
That was 4,110 since March 21st. Through Friday, March 27th.
All right. And then the BPT, no hard copies, no e-filing, no online, yeah.
Since March 21st,
Okay,
that's
and
correct.
then driver's license, what are you telling them to come back for? For the actual license? You're processing them all the way, but you're not letting them pay, and then you're not giving them a license?
Correct.
And you're going to have some kind of expedited process when you're back online to
Yes.
get them? All right. And the vehicle registration, you can do it all in person, hard copy.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, you said, the real property taxes. Okay, so when you said you certified the 2025 property tax roll, that's the one that went out, that's the...
Yes.
The certification, is it a new roll where they reassessed, where they increased?
No. So the governor wanted to, at the completion of the revaluation project, and it didn't occur anyway, ahead of time had she wanted to do it. She said she did not want to assess the new values for that particular role. And so as we move, though, toward getting a role for 2026, we do need to proceed carefully because Public Law 37-117 needs to be incorporated. So, as if you're familiar with the property tax statements, right, it doesn't make reference to anything, other than the current or the tax year it's for which it is. But that public law, we need to incorporate a way wherein it will reflect any increases related to the revaluation, but is deferred. And that deferral, as you are aware, ma'am, is, will remain until such time that the property is sold, or the zone is changed. And of course, that only is for certain property owners. So like single,
Yes.
family dwellings and,
Single and R2.
Right.
All right. So when was when was the assessment completed?
The assessment for the revaluation, I believe it was either late January or early February.
And when was
February.
and that's when the governor decided not to implement it for this year?
Oh, actually, even ahead of that, she said it wouldn't be fair to assess or to pass on the increased values, for that role.
Okay, because the $1 million that she put from, I think, CARES money or some other federal funds to do that assessment was over a year ago that was given to you for that assessment. So now they're waiving it for this year and they want to put that in for next year. So who issued the statements? Which, is it the same vendor we're talking about, or who actually printed and issued those statements?
So we have a process in that once the Board of Equalization certifies the roll and it is signed, we've already we have the information over the printers, and then we just give the go-ahead to go ahead and print it and mail it out.
So what was the delay?
I'm sorry?
So what was the delay in sending out those statements?
Well, we wanted to ensure that there were, that the information, although the values hadn't changed, that we were not, assessing inaccurately assessing penalties and interests from the start or from December.
I'm not understanding. What was the delay in December?
So we couldn't, although the values had not changed, right? The data had not interfaced over to the system and allowed us to generate a roll, from there.
Okay, I'm sorry, but wasn't it the same from the previous year?
Yes.
Same roll. The roll's the same from the previous year.
Right, but the payments that were made had an interface. So we were worried that it would show a delinquent, that it was delinquent. So.
But I don't understand why didn't you know that in advance? This has got nothing to do with this vendor that we're talking about and your delay with the vendor and the contract, right? So this is a separate issue. You're saying it's all in-house, and it was all in-house that you just didn't update your vendor? I mean, your...
The maintenance part of it. So it is the same vendor.
What do you mean?
Yeah. So...
To do it online.
Okay, so this one here, the maintenance for the subscription, I guess I don't know how to really explain it, except that, for example, if you're the Apple reseller or whatever, so that vendor is the local representative, if you will, that makes maintenance or does maintenance on that subscription. And so the vendor has actually admitted to me at one point in time that he did not know what was wrong, with the subscription, and whether or not a renewal of such a subscription would contain patches that, would essentially solve that problem.
Okay, I'm sorry, Director.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the real property tax?
Yes. Yes.
But I thought you said it was just a matter of you in-house reviewing the amounts and making sure that it reflected previous payments or something.
And so there's a lot more to that, in order for us to give the role to the Board of Equalization. And we were able to get the assistance to generate such a role. So that has gone out.
Right. But
I'm sorry.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. How do you say we're stuck with everything else with this vendor, but these you were able to do in-house? You were able to print them, send them out, review them, right?
Okay. So, and I don't know, and again, that's wherein the Amentum program is separate from the maintenance part of it, even though maintenance actually would include a segment of that, the real property. So it's, I'm sorry, I don't really know how to explain the, it is, I suppose it's not unlike the driver's license thing, right? Wherein, and it just so happens that driver's license has a different vendor, but the interface part of it, they are part of, the process.
Right. So can they pay real property taxes right now through the treasurer of Guam?
Yes.
All right. So you've been able to separate that part from the vendor, or you still have vendor issues?
The vendor issue we are experiencing right now is the current
with real property
agreement.
Tax.
With real property tax, no, we are going to go out. So that's done already,
okay.
But we're going to go out with an RFP to make sure that we generate the next role, and we want to go out with an RFP for the new system.
But the role is going to consist of the assessment that you've already, you already have?
It will, no, the next one will reflect the increased values.
Right. The one that you have already completed, right?
Yes,
and you
yes.
received in December or
Yes,
January? Yeah.
yes, but it will need to, there needs to be verbiage there that says,
Right.
you know, it's kind of like you're not paying this, but until such time that you sell it outside of your immediate family, you know, or there's a zone change.
So that one you said, because it expires, so you get to do a new
Yes.
solicitation on that?
Yes.
And that's really the only change that you need?
You mean with regard to the
I
property
guess
tax payment?
I'm still trying to understand, why it was delayed. If you were just going with the old property tax rolls.
Well, yeah, there are some aspects in there that we needed to be mindful of, and what we didn't want was a long line to, you know, into the real property.
That happens every year, right? Every year, this is the same, DRT should have the same issue. And so isn't there a process in place to do that ahead of time every year?
Yeah, yes, there is, but, you know, of course, again, we're also talking about, you know, staffing issues.
So is that the issue?
It's part of the issue, but we're beyond that, or we've gotten over that, and we're now trying to concentrate on the new role.
The stuff that's not updated on the website, why is that? Is that just, again, you're short of staff, or you just somebody that's not a priority?
I'm sorry, ma'am, but which part of the website?
I don't know. It says the regulatory ABC board meeting minutes not updated on website, and cannabis control board meeting minutes not posted on website. ABC board. That's stuff.
So what had transpired was when the board last met, or even before the board last met, there were meeting minutes that had yet to have been finalized and presented to the board for, you know, acceptance. And so what we had to do was kind of take it upon ourselves. The person was the head of a different agency and had volunteered to have her staff do that. When we had the oversight hearing, we knew, or we were advised to basically ensure that it was taken care of. So our staff took it upon themselves to go ahead and gather that information and present meeting minutes for approval to the board. We fell behind on that. There was no, I guess, the thinking was, if there was nothing to update, then therefore there was no reason to meet. Of course, since that hearing, it has been made clear to us that you must meet, even if there are no updates to be made. So, and any related agenda and meeting minutes need to be posted on the website. So we have actually, our team has worked to get that done, and we've actually met a couple times.
And you're sure, so I just wanted to ensure that this will not happen anymore? You've got that settled, or it's
we've gotten that settled.
An issue. All right, and then one more is this, one of your action items is to explore interagency integration, but you didn't give any examples. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so for example, what we were looking at, and I know we have to be careful because of disclosure issues of personal information and so forth. But what we know is that there are certain things that could possibly help or be mutually beneficial with the agencies. So for example, someone who goes to, land management, and land management, has their data. We want to ensure that whatever is there is something that we should be, my belief is that there should be some integration so that there isn't physical documentation being forwarded to us or perhaps a pile sitting somewhere, and so forth.
Thank you for raising that. So years ago, wasn't that one of the contracts that DRT had entered into is this integration with land management. And then at the end of the contract, the contractor said they own all the data, so we could not continue with the program like that. And now we're separate. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of that. That happened before my time, but certainly, I don't know of any vendor that would claim the data as being theirs. I'm sorry, I don't.
That's what I was told by land management years ago when trying to find out why we used to be able to access things online and then we couldn't. And because the contract had ended and government did not own that data. That's what I was told. But so lastly, my concern is just this situation where we already know what we need to do every year, every 5 years, and that we can't get that scheduled and done in advance or done on time is very concerning. And then that we get held hostage or we get held in very duress situations trying to negotiate a contract or with no time at all to try to find another vendor, that's just very concerning. And of course, they're going to increase prices because you have no other options that you've worked on. So that's the big concern for the taxpayers' money that's going to pay for these higher amounts. So I want to thank you for your work on this. I know it must be stressful, but it's just hard to understand this. It's like that's the online stuff that DRT does is one of the best improvements that the government has had over the last 4 years, to be honest. And I was always very proud of that, very saying that's where all agencies should look like. So this is really, really disappointing. And but I wish you the best in your negotiations and hope you can get good value for the government of Guam. And thank you all for all your work. And I know you have a very big customer base that you can hear from besides us. So thank you for that too.
Jusmasi, Senator Talahi. And also want to thank you, Mr. Byrne, for joining us. So those who might have questions for Mr. Byrne, he's available for us now. Senator Gumatauta, you recognize?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Reverend Tax, for being with us this morning. Let me just start with this. To start your testimony, you mentioned a customer service survey poll, 91%, that your customer service was good to excellent. Are you able to share that survey or poll with this committee?
I'll defer to the MVD administrator, please. She can answer that.
Can you share that with the committee?
Yes, we have the results, and I actually brought information with regards to it. And so our customer survey, we provided QR codes at all our windows, and this started February 13th. And as of March 26th, we received 97 responses, and our ratings are 91% rated services good to excellent, majority of transaction completed within 60 minutes. The key challenges identified was the inconsistent customer service experience, where we have perceived staff attitude concerns and wait time. But the key themes that came back was the staff professionalism and customer interaction, where most employees were described as helpful, efficient, respectful. A small number of negative interactions were reported, even limited instances of poor service. The wait time and customer flow concerns centered on length of wait and lack of visibility into the process. But again, systems and technology constraints were cause for occasional delays tied to system performance and technical disruptions.
So Zita, let me just interrupt. So 97, you get hundreds of customers on the regular. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's a very representative sample. And I know you're still collecting, so I'm hoping that by the time we come to the budget hearing, that number is not 97, maybe more like 497 or something a little bit larger than just that.
Right, Senator. And like I said, this customer service feedback just started February 13th.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. I think starting the testimony probably could have waited to maybe till the budget hearing, but I think that was just my 2 cents on that. Let me just move, if I can, to your operating levels for your staffing. You mentioned in your testimony that you're at 63%. Why not prioritize either with the Department of Administration or the Office of the Governor, Marie, to bring in resources to support the operations of Rev and Tax?
Well, the part of the challenge with that, sir, is where we are lacking is the staff that have the technical expertise and skill set that is needed for those positions.
So, Marie, you don't think we have some of the competent staff to support Rev and Tax even at this critical time?
Well, it's
across
kind of
government.
It's kind of, well, it's difficult, right? Because we've actually lost some people. So, for example, in the examination branch, right, we've lost people from there to Department of Administration. And, why, you make more money, you don't need to, have this additional, education or rather specialty. So it's been kind of difficult. And I have to say that historically we have, even prior to my coming to the agency, we have relied on limited term appointments. And then at the same time, we had grown to the point where we were told by previous bodies, right, legislative bodies, that, hey, you have way too many LTAs. So we actually have taken steps to ensure and to assist them with the applying, rating, and so forth, and going through the competitive process. And we have been able to have those LTAs kind of go into classified positions. So I'm happy to say that we're at 10%, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even a little less now, but we're at 10% of the total workforce. But again, back to the vacancies, it's the specialized areas. And what the examination team, certainly under the purview or leadership of the tax enforcement administrator, has done is to kind of go into an agreement, internship participation. And so we've been able to generate some interest there with GCC and UOG's programs. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe we recently hired 2. Is it 2?
Yeah. And why I'm going to this, it's just kind of gets into my next question, is if you, in your presentation, you mentioned you had 10 declined for these positions. You mentioned 4 of what, based on the testimony a little bit later, close to maybe 41 recruitments. Mm-hmm. How many total applicants are you talking about that applied for a job at the Department of Rev and Tax? If you have 41 recruitments, what's the number?
So it depends on the type of job that it is, right? Of course.
No, I'm looking for the total amount of applicants. What have you seen for all those jobs? How many applicants?
We don't get that information because DOA receives the applications. We just get the list from them, and there may be 5, there may be 6. So we don't know that number.
So that's what I'm asking, Michelle, is if you had 41 vacancies, if you told this committee we had 6,000 applicants, that's a better reference for us. We're an oversight hearing, right? I mean, this is done by this branch to monitor and to support with public policy the agencies that are under the respective committee oversight. Again, it's our fundamental means of involvement with the executive branch. It's available to us. So I'm trying to help here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand. Okay. If you say, you come in here and say I had 10 declined, I'm curious just how many in fact applied.
Yeah, and if I may clarify, and I apologize if this has led to some confusion, but the 41 is actually vacant positions that have not been announced yet. So we have We've certainly worked closely with DOA, and I have to say that and I've said so before, that we have seen an improvement, in that. In fact, we know that they too are short-staffed, and when we had presented some of our vacancies, they came back and they say, okay, realistically, can you prioritize which ones you'd like for us to do first, given that we can't do all of them at once?
Okay, so then which kind of is a good segue, then how many of those LTAs that you mentioned earlier, how many of those people are applying for vacancies in your department?
So
permanent vacancies, I should say.
Yeah, well, the number that we are down to, I think, I forget what we were up to, but the number that we are currently down to is only 10%. And some of those actually include, we actually include the retirees that had been hired back. So I would say that we've seen progress and success in having those limited term appointments, qualify, rate for, and get, promoted into these classified positions.
Okay, with that said, you mentioned also federal, local tax changes. I know that you have been here. Last year, you asked for your budget. We were seeing many changes. Is that going to be addressed in your current budget request? These federal tax changes you need to support?
So we certainly, ideally, we would like to get those changes in advance, or at least notice of those changes in advance. But to answer your question, yes, we are going to ask. We are going to ask for more. Just given the experience that we've had.
I'm just trying to prepare my brain, Marie, for what was going to be coming our way. So that's why I ask. But no, it's encouraging, because it's one thing to say, okay, we are seeing this. We know that they're going to come. You've had a couple of months to kind of already sit on that, at least 4 or 5 months perhaps in the fiscal year, that you have a chance now to say, okay, here's with some certainty, here's what we're looking for in the next fiscal year, right? Okay, with that said, I think for me, Mr. Chair, when I'm looking at this, it's more the priority, and I'm thinking as you have these, I know you lost some guys to DOA, but in a very critical time, it would make a little sense. We've seen it across all the public safety agencies. It's just we have to, what's the most important thing we're trying to accomplish, which is to get our work done. If Mr. Byrne can afford to let him go for a couple of weeks to support them, and it's been done in the past where we've seen, and going back to my career over 2 decades plus, we've seen the transfer of employees over to support critical times that the agencies, in this case, Revenue Tax, can face. It's not out of the realm of possibilities to ask for that assistance at a very critical juncture.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, let me just move on if I can, Mr. Chair. Can you tell us for the record who is the real ID vendor today for the Department?
That is Veridos.
Who is the passport office or passport technology vendor for the Department of Revenue Taxation?
Passport? I think what Passport does is they process here, they help, they prepare the applications and so forth, and then it's mailed to Hawaii and it's actually processed in Hawaii.
So it's the Department of State is the vendor?
Likely, yes.
Okay, who is the income tax processing vendor for the record for Revenue Tax?
It would be
the
DMR.
Technology.
DMR.
Who is the vehicle registration technology vendor for Revenue Tax?
It would be DMR as well.
Would that also include the safety inspection technologies that are used in the private sector? Is that also DMR?
I believe, I'm not sure.
Okay, why I'm asking is there's been some scuttle that perhaps some of the hang up with the data, I'm not going to blame the GFMIS. I think it's about damn time that the government of Guam is able to listen and be on the same sheet of music when it comes to technology. You could have easily made a call to the judicial branch, which has done that effectively with their own FMIS, and I'm thankful that the executive branch is finally going that way. There was some scuttle that it has a lot to do with sticking more with the GFMIS, is that more of a rumor that the reason why you're icing out the guys like at DMR is because really you're trying to go down a road with the new vendor for GFMIS?
I can tell you that that's not the case. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. When we talk about trying to pick up some costs, have you guys thought about perhaps going back to the fee schedule of rev and tax to modernize the fee schedules and use that as a means to supplement operations across all the divisions of rev and tax?
Yes, actually, we need to take a closer look as to what, we do get to keep. With regard to fees across the agency, that is certainly something that's actually been a project that we have discussed but not quite gotten to, because we need to update the fees. And what we want to do is kind of wrap everything up into a single, effort, if you will, right? As opposed to kind of piecemealing things.
Yeah, I know, but Marie, sometimes it takes the effort. If you can go down one or two divisions at some point, then 5 will follow. But it just getting it started is probably half the battle, right?
Yes, but we also need to make sure that, we consult with our legal team to ensure that what we're doing is proper.
No, but you effectively could start it. They're going to help you along the way, but you have to have that will to say, hey, this is costing me X amount. We need to go down a road to modernize to support that cost.
Noted.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to a question, Mr. Chair, to the tax commissioner. I understand that they just completed the evaluation late January, early February. Is that what you just said on the record? Based on ARP funds from 2021, that's what actually is modernized now, the new evaluation?
So that's where the money came from,
Okay.
For the valuation.
So can I ask, because Michelle, do you agree with the assessment of the governor that to not move forward on valuations as the commissioner? Don't you have more authority than she does when it comes to the valuation?
Yeah.
You're not
the governor is
tax
actually the
commissioner
tax
anymore?
commissioner. Michelle is the banking and
I'm sorry.
insurance commissioner.
So then as tax commissioner, don't you have more authority than the governor of Guam to move
She's
forward?
actually considered the tax commissioner. The governor.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm looking at the statute wrong. The tax commissioner does have a lot more power.
I should also point out, sir, that Public Law 37-117, of course, it covers the majority, right, of property tax, owners. So I think if you're looking at, if you're kind of maybe remarking on it not taking effect, we need to be mindful of that law. Now it's a different story for, let's say, hotel properties, and so forth. That's going to be a significant increase. And I had heard a comment that that's a significant increase, and it's going to have such a detrimental effect on those that are already experiencing low visitor numbers. So I don't know. I'm not an economist. I don't know to what effect, that would have, or whether or not it was advantageous to make it take effect earlier, or perhaps this, with the previous role. But I don't know.
I'm an optimist. I think we read a report that we're 6 months out and we're tracking to get 1 million tourists. So, I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse relative to where tourism will end up at the end of the day. I only have a few more questions, Mr. Chair. Recognizing that the OPA concluded that real property revenue leakage occurred as a result of several challenges facing DRT at the time. This was part of an OPA audit back in 2018, I believe. What can you tell us today confirming the steps you have taken to address the specific findings from the OPA back in 2018?
I am not familiar with the recommendations or the audit findings of that particular report. I can certainly tell you that with regard to property taxes, there's a law that actually I don't remember when it was passed, but certainly it affects any past due balances that are on the books. 2014, for example, I believe it's effective 2014 to present. The statute of limitations is only at 10 years. Anything prior to 2014, the statute of limitations is 30, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, of course, it's one of the many things that we try to address. And, you know, we have the branches that work collectively in order to ensure that what is owed to the government is paid.
Okay, with the full house today, let me ask this question, and we asked it on the floor across the hall last week. But I'll just ask it again today. What portion of the estimated $30 million which the government collected through the 2018 tax amnesty program represented real property taxes, and how much of the estimated $130 million in uncollected taxes that was mentioned during this month's session are tied to unpaid real property taxes? This is a property tax question.
Okay. I don't know if, Carolyn, would you have information on property tax? I know she has some information on the amnesty, but I don't believe it's specific, and I could be wrong. She might have information on that.
Because it was made evident during, as she's looking for it, because during the budget or during the session, it was mentioned it was not just singularly GRTs, it wasn't singularly property taxes, it wasn't, so it was a whole host of different things.
Sure.
I'm only focusing on property taxes, considering the fact that we are having a hard time with the technology.
I'm sorry I didn't bring the Tax Amnesty 2018 report with me today. We can certainly provide it later on today.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend, if you can, Mr. Chair, to get that information. I think it's clear as we are going forward, Mr. Chair, we're trying to assist. And again, I ask these questions more or less to understand that as we are coming here prepared to, you know, you're going to ask us for more money, and then when we ask a question, we're hoping to get a requisite response. It makes it harder for decision makers like us to say, hey, with some certainty, if I give you $1, what's the return that I get? And I'm hoping that as we move forward, that we are prepared. And I know that, and I'm not trying to beat you up right now, Marie, that's not my intention. It's just that as we are here to try to help in this, it's an oversight hearing, for crying out loud, I'm trying to get the details so we can help the committee make some decisions, especially about your budget.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time, and thank you again, Reverend Sachs.
Susan Smonsi, I'll have my follow-up questions, but Senator Perez has joined us as well. So Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in looking, DRT's issues, there's I think one of the basic issues are obviously infrastructure and human resource. I think those are the really critical issues that need to be addressed. And so there's also legislative fixes and administrative fixes. And, I'm more than happy to, maybe we can just tease out some of these things first of all. So in the listing that was provided to us, let's just talk about the real property taxes. And so it states that there was a delay in payment. Why was there a delay in payment?
So it's actually more the delay of the statements, for 2025, and that again was caused by an interface issue between the TPS and our Amentum program.
Okay, so that's a IT problem then? Is it an IT problem?
It was a problem with the program that a lot later the vendor did admit that even if the subscription was renewed, that there were likely patches with the subscription renewal, that the system may not work. And he did allude to aging equipment, possibly on our side and likely on the OTEC side.
Okay, so then it's definitely IT still related. It's affiliated with that as well as, okay, so when you noticed that there was a delayed payment, was it already can you just give me a briefing of what happened when you realized there was a delayed payment and then the vendor said that, okay, we admit that there's an issue on the IT side. So what is the time frame between that?
I believe it stopped working in July of 2024. I think it was 2024. And what happened was we were entering into 2025. So this is the contract or the subscription renewal that would have cost us an additional $150,000 as compared to the previous year. And then what I was advised that for 2025, it was very similar to, I guess, simply put, like a Microsoft Office subscription renewal, in that even if, number one, it couldn't be prorated, and number two, it was like even if you did not renew your subscription the year before, that you were not permitted to kind of skip and expect that the program would be renewed as normal, the next time. So we were looking at, for a product that there was no guarantee it was going to work, we were looking at having to pay $646,000, and we did not think that that was prudent.
Okay, and then, so July 2024 is when you learned it wasn't working. What was the reaction? What was the response to that? I mean, what did you do in-house to address that issue so that we're not faced with this issue today?
So it really was, there was a manual input of any payments that more or less manual indication or input that payments had indeed been made, and that the penalties and interest would not apply to any payments that were made in a timely manner.
Okay, but in regards to sending out, so the other issue too is notifying property owners of their taxes. So is that different from this?
No, we were able to send the property tax statements out that year, but we were not able, or we were hesitant in doing so the following year because we were not comfortable with the fact that we would have to, that the information was accurate enough for the Board of Equalization to certify.
Okay, besides DRT, who else knew about this failure and it not working in 2024? Did you seek counsel or assistance outside of the department?
So we did, I did seek counsel, and in order for us.
Sorry, is this internal counsel?
Internal counsel. Okay, correct.
So you sought internal counsel.
Yes. The issue was, we couldn't prorate. We couldn't prorate the amount. There was no way to prorate it. We had suggested a government claim for that, but for whatever reason, the vendor was reluctant to do that. So we had a product, we didn't have maintenance for it, and therefore, because we also did not renew the subscription, we did not have any patches, but we were also told in the same breath that it likely, there was no guarantee it would work.
Who created the solicitation package for this particular product?
I believe that was, it was done a while ago, and as I mentioned, what has historically happened with regard to contracts, if you will, is, so there's a contract that's executed, and then every year, what was happening was, it was being renewed via purchase order. And so, we needed to, if enough time has passed such that, it would have been better for us to go out, with a new bid perhaps, and so forth. So that was the thing. We received a quote, and it was at least $150,000 more than the previous year. So when we had inquired, the remark came back that it was the cost of doing business that had not been passed on to us.
Okay, so the contracts, so basically you were just signing purchase orders to renew a contract until this thing happened, right?
Yes.
And so who reviews the solicitations? Who reviews purchase orders prior to signing?
So the purchase orders are normally routed to Mr. Espiritu, and then he actually consults with me and or the deputy.
Does your legal advisors look at it?
Yes.
And so they approved the purchase orders?
Yes, and actually they were the ones that said it needed to go out for a competitive bid.
Okay, so did it go out for competitive bid? Because it seems to me you're stating that you just signed a purchase order to renew it, but there wasn't any competitive bidding at this point?
Prior to the discontinuance or the non-renewal of the subscription, it was done through purchase order. And then with this particular one, when the process was going to start again, that's when legal said, you need to go out and you need to, ensure before any dollar is spent that you need to ensure that this is, it goes out competitively.
Okay, prior to that, it was not done competitively, even though the sole source law says that you have to do your market research. I believe there was an overlap in time.
So I believe that that process was indeed followed, and I certainly...
But after the failure, not before?
No, I think even before they followed the checklist, but where we ran into issues was really just when it came time to whether or not we should renew the subscription and the maintenance part of that subscription.
Okay, so there seems to be an issue. Perhaps maybe this is a learning opportunity, rather than sign purchase orders, always see if there's competitive bidders out there.
Yes.
Okay. The issue, yes, Tammy.
So I just wanted to make a comment that because of sort of this novel strategic improvement of efficiency, that's why it's been more so like bottlenecked. So historically speaking, right, and I'm just talking from the standpoint when I was there 2020, 2022, there was discussions about how we could improve infrastructure efficiency, but again, it takes money, and kind of to go back to Senator Taidegui's comment, it takes money to do certain things. It takes time and transition, and even with DOA, with their new system, it's great. I mean, I'll be the first to attest to that, but it took a really long time to kind of get there. So with any sort of transition, even the planning, stages of trying to segue into a new system or whatever the plans may be, whether it's part and parcel, the whole shebang, it's gonna take time. So with the infrastructure already in place, sometimes it's just easier to say, well, we kind of have to make sure that operations go consistently and we keep up with it. But that's not to say I have every respect for all of the recommendations here today by this panel.
Okay, so the question I have then is, when we first started, I know DOA cannot communicate with DRT even though they're in the same building. Like as far as the money, right? There's a disconnect between, back in 2019, I would say, there was a disconnect between the DRT financial system and the DOA system. And so that's why I want to get clarity on, is to what extent, maybe perhaps we can go back a little bit further. The government financial system Does it include DRT, and why not if it doesn't include DRT? Maybe this is a question for either the director or of either DOA or DRT.
So I know there are certain aspects of it that do include DRT. And as mentioned earlier, I believe there are phases, and perhaps Director Byrne can speak more to that.
Yes, yeah. Can you explain the changes with the incoming FMIS system to DRT? How has that impacted DRT? Maybe we could start from there.
Well, with regard to HR, I can certainly tell you that it's made moving GG1s.
I'm sorry, can we focus on the IT first, if you don't mind? And has there been any upgrades to DRT's side in regards to IT and the FMIS system?
Yeah, Senator, and I agree, I appreciate that line of questioning. So I think we'll shift to DOA, because that was why I invited DOA, and when, thank you, Ed, I know you had some other obligations, but this really cuts to the core of our discussion as well about what many of us thought was going to be this integration and this meshing of the FMIS and whatever modules would come down the line to kind of parallel run their system on the S400 and eventually assume the duties.
Sorry,
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair and Senator. Let me try and clarify the situation. So when DOA was contemplating and went out for quotes for a new system, DRT was not involved in that. DRT really didn't want to participate in that. And indeed, referring particularly to the interface that you were asked about, I think Senator asked about, was the legacy system produces an accounting, an electronic report of the tax receipts. And we have to take that and translate it into the new system. About 2 months ago, we opened up discussions with DRT to unify that system so that we don't have this double entry that's been going on, not just since we separated out our systems, but for many years before that. It never seemed to me to be a productive process. In fact, it was a confusing process. So we have started to have discussions with that. But with respect to the rest of DRT, they're in exactly the same position as any other line agency with respect to the new system. Their financials are part of the new system, and to the extent that we can deal with it, their HR system and their procurement system is embedded in the new system.
Yeah, pardon me, Senator Perez, but you came after, and I already had this line of questioning with DRT, so I wanted to get this with you on the record. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. And so you're having discussions with the IT part. So what is the goal, and what timeline can we expect for there to be an integration so we can streamline this process?
The goal, Senator, is that we should be able to integrate the revenue part of the system by the end of the year.
Okay. And resources-wise, is that additional funding that's needed to do that? Is there additional funding needed for that?
There may well be in the new financial year, and we'll want to talk to the chairman about that, but within this financial year, there is sufficient funding within the existing FMIS contract to take us through the end of this financial year.
Okay, so just to for the public out there, how would it look like? How would it benefit them to get this integration between DOA, the system, and DRT? What would that look like?
Well, if I may just answer with respect to what we see at DOA, is when a taxpayer comes to pay taxes at Treasurer of Guam, instead of it going into two separate systems and it taking several minutes before the taxpayer gets the receipt, it will go into one system and the system will produce a unified receipt. And hopefully, any lines that we see at present while taxpayers line up to pay taxes will disappear, because that process now has been, effectively the time should be cut in half.
Thank you. And for DRT, what do you see changing in your agency with this integration?
Well, I don't think, I mean, it's been working fine so far with the part that, we are part of, but certainly it would help if we can upgrade our computer systems in the event that, not having an updated one will affect such integration. Okay, so, you've been testifying for the, I guess, for a while in this hearing and additional hearings. All the issues coming up with IT and some things that you don't anticipate come up. Do you think there is a need to have a response team, even have what's called a program management office to kind of do an audit of the IT, I guess, needs and shortage, the shortfalls of the agency? Do you see a need for that? Or do you think DOA's integration is going to solve all those problems? I think we definitely have a need for it, and certainly is one of the reasons why we brought Ms. Amuan back to our staff.
Is that sufficient?
She would need to work, of course, in connection with the Office of Technology, as well as our systems folks, and be in touch with the Department of Administration. But, I don't know. I'll let her speak more to that.
Actually, if you can, is that sufficient in regards to the IT needs? Do you think OTEC and Tammy is going to solve the issues of DRT in regards to IT?
We have, well, actually, as we speak, we're awaiting what we had already procured in new equipment, and so forth. And Tammy is certainly working toward additional funding to be able for us, to obtain, new equipment, and so forth. So
okay. So as far as an audit of the agency's needs, that's been done?
I don't know if she has started that.
And what is the I guess the plan, the detailed plan for the audit? Do you have a detailed plan?
Okay, so part and parcel, if I may, it's not a detailed plan as of yet. Again, we're just...
so that's important.
Yeah.
Because,
but we have plans.
How do you assess if you don't have a full, I guess, scope of work is what I'm saying. So you need a scope of work to really kind of hedge or address these issues that are coming up piecemeal, right? So who has the capacity and the background for that in DRT?
At DRT?
Yeah, who is a subject matter expert at DRT?
I can't call myself a subject matter expert. However, I have dealt with grants. I have been able to obtain upwards of $1 million for HRA when I was employed there. So when I came back, when I was invited back to DRT, my plan was to kind of part and parcel use what we have existing right now, the staff, the subject matter experts, the know-how, and just sort of collectively get that together. Also, like Ms. Zita, she's been doing assessments on the phones, the infrastructure with the phones. And so we've kind of come together, and this all kind of came about with the Congressman's ask, right, with the appropriations for FY27. We got that together. We submitted it to Guam State Clearinghouse. So we have a plan, but again, infancy, uncharted territory. We're getting all of the people that we possibly can, all hands on deck to kind of formulate this plan so that when we come to the cusp of wherever it is that this journey is taking us, we have plans, formulated plans as to how we're going to get it all into a comprehensive, cohesive package.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, that sounds great. It's just that, we're seeing we're going to be impacted. We're already impacted as far as collections are concerned. We're behind about 35 million in collections, and with the current tax filing right now, the system, when you go online to look for forms, you can't access it. So you have to go to IRS to get the forms. So, and then what about the local forms? So, there's a huge impact to the collections that are occurring, and which didn't exist, from my knowledge, hasn't existed. And so it's in quite a while perhaps, but so this has real impacts, and I'm just concerned that there isn't a response team that's going to really make the I mean, Tammy, no offense to you, I know you're doing a great job, but I think what I'm trying to get at is there needs to be a response equal to the issue at face here today. And so I think that's, I've seen this before, this list before. I see there's some improvements, which I'm very grateful for, but still it's the root issues that need to be really changed. So, going back to, because when I look at this list, I think there's some that are more, like, if you prioritize them, that's going to be really impactful. So I think it's really critical that you have a team that's going to address it in a quick way. And
I just wanted to make a really quick comment that we were working also with the public information officer, and although some of those forms, I don't know if it was mentioned, but this particular vendor is also in charge of like web administration. So that's kind of part and parcel, again, why we're kind of going at this speed, and we're trying to be cautious and just making sure that we cross all of our T's and dot all the I's in the process.
has anybody been held accountable for the drop in subscriptions? Have you actually, I'm sorry, this is the director, have you looked at your staffing and see have you held anybody accountable? Because this is really a critical thing. And how have you held them accountable?
Yeah. I'm responsible. I don't have an excuse for you, ma'am.
But others that are on your team that should have, kept an eye on this. And
yes, and that's where I've indicated, I believe, on the agenda that, we've identified someone who will monitor such expirations of contracts, subscriptions, et cetera. We just don't have anyone at this time or prior to that and before everything came to a head.
Okay, I'm going to turn the questions over to procurement law, so sole source IT. I did introduce a bill to extend the sole source for IT. It wasn't, I guess it was rejected in testimony. And I just want to get your feedback today, and maybe Director Byrne. So I know I introduced the bill in Bill 248-37, I said what it was. And it seems to me they are looking for a legislative fix in addition to administrative fixes. I would like to get your opinion about this. I've already heard testimony that there wasn't any competitive bidding that was done prior to the failure that happened. And so, but in the case that there isn't any, let's say it's a true sole source, this bill could help, increase the timeline for sole source if it is truly a sole source type of service. May I get your thoughts on that, Director Byrne?
Yes, thank you, Senator. If I could address it in a kind of more general way. I think the major objection to the bill when it was presented was that it kind of discouraged innovation, that especially with IT, a sole source, if it continues and rolls forward, it does kind of mitigate against innovation in systems. And I think we're all well aware that we want to keep these systems up to date. I mean, I was talking earlier about the integration of the revenue system into the new FMIS system. The other big separate system is the public health PH Pro system that produces expenditures that has to be transferred into the GFMIS system. We're working with these agencies on both of these to unify and basically turn the whole thing around. In the past, for whatever reason, the peripheral systems determined how the central accounting system should work, and that's obviously a reverse of what should happen. So now we're trying to reverse that and make sure that these peripheral systems produce the right information and it can be transferred accurately and instantly into the central accounting system. But there is one area where we have succeeded in improving systems, and that is in how we handle tax refunds, which now we issue, for those that are paid by check, we issue the tax refunds on our new self-sealer checks. So it takes Treasurer Guam like a day to process these checks rather than 3 or 4 days that it did under the old system where the checks had to be stuffed in envelopes. So, you know, we are working towards improving these systems. That was quite a significant, but fortunately, fairly small step in the system to make sure that we are updating these systems and using modern technology.
Okay, thank you for that. So I want to shift over to HR stuff. And I know we've been in talks many times regarding this, but I'm glad to see that you are moving forward with the, you know, working with the educational entities. How can you strengthen that a little bit more? Because, you know, obviously this has been a chronic issue. I know you mentioned, actually, if I can go back to, one of the issues was the PDQs, right? The descriptions and, you know, the pay is less at DRT for one particular category, I believe, versus DOA. And so can that be fixed administratively?
So I believe that Michelle Santos and Ms. Zita Pangilinan actually took the time to go over to DOA and talk to the folks there as to what can be done on our side in order to improve the areas that you mentioned. And I don't know where that is at this moment, but it's certainly been a discussion that's taken place already.
Okay, so maybe Zita, can you give us an update on the PDQs and, you know, modernizing, I guess, the criteria, because some of them, they actually are getting paid lower than DOA for the same job, same particular job?
That's right, Senator, and thank you very much for that question, because we are in process. We've identified the positions that we do need to reclassify, and had already discussion on strategies in terms of bringing in the supervisors specific to those positions so that we can do it uniformly with all the everyone impacted with DOA. And so we believe it can be resolved administratively in consultation with Mr. Tony Uggan at DOA.
Okay, thank you. And then in regards to the programs for Director Lizama, in regards to programs from University of Guam and GCC, you know, we know that a lot of the degrees are, to work for DRT requires degrees. I know with the, so yeah, is there articulation agreement between GCC and UOG to create this pipeline for DRT?
We do have agreements in place with regard to the internship programs. And so I'm happy to say that the one with the UOG resulted in a couple of those interns expressing a desire to work over at the agency. And I believe the one for GCC has either just commenced or will commence. So we haven't seen anything there. But we are encouraged by the interest generated by those programs, and we hope to continue and grow that.
Okay, that's great. So one thing that I would like to advocate for, so even going further into the high schools, they're creating pre-apprenticeships that can lead into GCC and then maybe eventually UOG. We have 2,000 students that graduate every year. That's a pool of workers, untapped workers, that can hopefully build up DRT. And then in regards to the Internal Revenue Code, I think this is really critical, getting software updates and staff training. I know in the past budgets, we've appropriated money for this. Yeah, so where are we with that training? I mean, according to this, there was no money for staff training. I think the type of training is really critical. It's not just any kind of training. We need training that is specific to this area.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. If you can maybe give us an update on that.
I just wanted to clarify that the training that I mentioned there, it was really just with regard to any mandates that occur ahead of the tax seasons. But training in particular, we did have in the last couple of years, we did have revenue officer training, and those are the ones in collection, wherein we did bring in some IRS folks to conduct that training. There is also some monies, although I don't believe I didn't put it on the agenda, but we do have a small grant wherein our current staff are able to train the revenue agents in the exam branch. So I don't believe, that has only just started. Of course, the IRS people that we were working with were affected somewhat. They were out of the office. And so now that they're back, and then one of them went on personal leave, personal extended leave, extended personal leave, I should say. And, now that she's back, we have resumed the discussion on the training.
Yeah, so that goes towards, staffing, because, as far as retention, I think how you invest in your workers, that really goes a long way. So I would really advocate for that, training that's really going to be impactful to the agency.
Yeah.
In addition to trying to create a pipeline for entry-level jobs, there also has to be another emphasis on how to keep your workers in the positions and have them grow and to potentially get promoted to these higher positions. And that's really, I think, one of the chronic issues within DRT. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but it needs immediate attention and immediate results. And so I really would like to advocate and ask that your team really put forward not only detailed action plans, but even implementation. And so maybe perhaps in the next oversight hearing, we can see your scope of work and the progress you made towards that to really kind of build out what you have here. And so, yeah, that's my thoughts about how to fix what's going on at DRT.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is Monsi, Senator Perez, and just a couple of follow-ups. First of all, Ed, and thank you once again, Mr. Byrne, for going by. I understand on the financial management system in terms of the revenue side. My direct question is there a module, was there any anticipation ever that the integration of the FMIS system would be designed to duplicate the current licensure contracts that DRT has.
Sorry, duplicate the what contract?
The licensure, the current licenses that they have to negotiate for, is that contained within the FMIS capabilities?
It should be, it should be, I guess is the answer. The law allows agencies to procure outside GSA for professional services. Those two words are very ambiguous as to what exactly that means. And different agencies interpret it differently. In this particular case, since my understanding, my best understanding is this was just a continuation of the existing contract. In my view, there were no professional services. This was just a contract, but GSA was not involved in the initial stage. We are now because of everything having got to the stage that it's got to, but it was not involved in the initial stages, but had it been, it would have gone through the regular GFMIS system.
So you're currently in talks with DRT to be able to at least have a backup plan?
Yes, as of Friday, we are.
Yeah, Friday was an interesting day. Thank you. So this is probably a Edburn question and a Marie question. So we looked up on the system, at least what we were able to look into for ARP. This is what we counted on our sheet, was 1.965 million DRT for upgrades, and then of that, 1.265 million went to DMR, and then the actual set aside for DRT was 5.3 million. That's kind of a gulf between the two. So did they claw back the 3.5, or you still have that money available?
We have no money available from ARP.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, no.
So you did not expend your 5.3 according to the recordation of
we only had, I believe it's 3.5 left. So I'm not sure why there's showing that discrepancy.
Yeah, but 3.5 of the 5.1, it just means that I hate to say it again, but you failed to use that money.
No, I mean, and I can go back to that, sir, but we didn't. All I know is that we only had enough really for. We really had the bulk of it had gone to the revaluation project.
Oh, so you're saying this equipment purchases and then so the 3.5 went towards the revaluation?
We had received approval to use it for the revaluation project.
So then that moved from upgrades to revaluation.
Correct.
Okay. So Ed, you concur with that?
Yes, the bulk of it was the contract for the revaluation itself.
Which went to equalization, but will not be implemented until next fiscal year.
So that, the values as higher values as a result of the revaluation will not take effect until the later property tax roll.
So I guess the final one, Ed, with GSA, I mean, is this sort of seamless between the discussions between DRT and whenever either these issues or other issues go out in terms of kind of the strict procurement guidelines and tutelage to where it kind of all the options they have are on the table?
Well, you asked earlier, or one of your colleagues did, about the actual process for renewing these expiring contracts. That responsibility starts with the agency, whether DRT or whatever other agency. GSA role in all this is to take that requisition that comes from the agency, and that's what we want from agencies, not just DRT, but we're trying to make sure that all agencies comply, is that we get a requisition which creates in the system what we call a pre-encumbrance that means that that money is reserved and cannot be used again. And then we take that requisition and turn it into a real encumbrance. But the whole idea of doing it that early is to make sure that one single sum of money is only available for one single project and cannot be looked at for several projects, which was a weakness before.
Vice Speaker, Vice Chair, closing comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question on the, you were mentioning that I think it was 4,110 returns that were filed between March 21st and March 27th. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's on process?
That's correct.
How long would it take to process that 4,110?
Again, I want to say, so what they have been able to do is a part of the whole process, right? They haven't been able to create new records, but there's actually a lot that goes into the processing of these tax returns, but whatever they can do manually and without the actual system creating a new record that's what the team has been working on. So they can, they receive returns, they prep them, is what they're called. They're scanned, ready to go, and then the next step would be to create a record and actually process it into the system. But I want to say, again, depending on the amount or the type of returns also that are in, but that 1 week could take anywhere from, it probably could set back like another week or two, for the processing part of it. But, the longer, and hopefully this, the system issues are resolved very soon. But that backlog of 1 week is, I would say, generally about 1 week's worth of processing that needs to be done. I would need to look at like the reports tracking, and I can get that information, just I don't have a better estimate than, being a week behind is kind of where we're at with it.
Yeah, so I just hope that, the department keeps the taxpayers informed as to, the status of their tax refunds, right? Or whether it's going to be, we're quick to put out that we paid it, right? So let's keep the public informed also as to what their status is or the process, and that way they don't have to keep calling or, just to get an update status, right?
Right. Well, unfortunately, the last status update that was given, the date of returns, refunds being paid, is the same a week later, or 10 days later now.
Okay. But thank you for your time. Thank you, Director, and your team for being here this afternoon. And we look forward to having at least some type of good news in the very, 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 very near future, maybe tomorrow, something like that.
Thank you, Bob.
Let's just all work together to find out, and how is it that we can continue the progress.
And again, thank you for recognizing that, our staff, this is certainly not their fault. They're doing the best they can. We all recognize, the management team, we recognize, just how hard they work in spite of the challenges of aging equipment, perhaps, resources that they don't have and so forth. So, thank you.
We said that on the floor during session, and we'll say it again. We really do appreciate, and we appreciate, once again, I want to thank my colleagues for the questions. I want to thank Director Marie Lizama, and also, I know you weren't part of this, but you answered the call to our letter, Director Byrne, for gracing us here today to be able to answer some questions as well. You've been helpful to this committee in providing clarity on a very complex and evolving situation. And even before all this bad press, you've been helpful towards this committee as we deliberate measures that impact our island. While we are unfortunately in this position today, I want to be clear. This hearing is not simply about casting blame. It's about understanding what happened, identifying where the breakdowns occurred, and ensuring the necessary steps are taken so that this does not happen again. That said, the impact on our community is real. Residents, taxpayers, and businesses, big and small, are being affected, many through no fault of their own, and it's our responsibility to ensure that government systems are reliable, responsive, and accountable. This committee expects clear timelines for full system restorations, stronger coordination between agencies, particularly DRT and DOA, and a comprehensive forward-looking plan to modernize and safeguard these critical systems. We will continue to exercise active oversight to ensure these issues are addressed, not just in the short term, but permanently. The people of Guam, we hear your concerns, and we will continue working to ensure that your government works for you. With that and said, and also once again in reverence to Holy Week, we wish God's blessings on all of you as we go through Holy Week and say our prayers, like always, but a most special week. And so thank you for being here today on this Monday and almost a 4-hour hearing. And this hearing is adjourned now by the Committee on Finance and Government Operations at 12:15. Happy Easter.